He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. From 12:30 to 1:30 here at the Boston Public Library, we're going to be joined by Boston Mayor Michelle Wu for another segment of Ask the Mayor. She'll take our questions and yours. And later on, Ben Mezrich with his new book, Breaking Twitter. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Excellent, thanks.
Good. So joining us now on Zoom is the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. Welcome. Good to see you.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Attorney General, for being with us. So let's start. You have started this new reproductive policing group, I guess, about what's going on at crisis pregnancy centers. Tell us.
Well, we established a reproductive justice unit not too long ago, and we have a director, Sapna, who's working very hard. And the goal of the unit is to make sure that as we are looking to protect the reproductive rights of folks here in Massachusetts and help those who may be coming here, that we're doing that work in a very intersectional way, and not just talking about access to abortion care, but the full spectrum of reproductive care, which also includes maternal health. So this unit is up and running, and we, of course, are meeting with folks in the community and stakeholders across the Commonwealth to make sure that the agenda within that unit in protecting these rights is informed by the community.
You know, for people who don't know, there was a harrowing story about a woman that went in and got an ultrasound. They told her she had a fine pregnancy. Then she found out she had a fallopian tube pregnancy, which can be fatal. They made a big mistake, obviously. What's the problem with crisis pregnancy centers for people that don't know? That was a medical mistake, but there's other problems with them.
It's misinformation. And so we have continued to receive complaints from folks who are going to crisis pregnancy centers and who are talking about the misinformation they're receiving. To be clear, these centers do not provide reproductive health care. They do not provide access to an abortion. And I want to make that clear because folks are going into these facilities under the impression that they do. They do not. And so our new reproductive justice unit is actively working on those complaints. And we encourage folks to continue to reach out to our office. And we will be more forthcoming if there is any enforcement action we choose to take in the future.
We're talking to the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. Over her right shoulder, wherever she is, has a little plaque that says, "Choose Joy." So I think we know what that means.
Yeah, we're all trying, aren't we?
Some of us are. Attorney General.
It's very important that you do.
Yeah.
It's a lot going on in the world.
There sure is.
Joy.
So, Attorney General, Diana DiZoglio, the auditor, was with us here Friday at the library and responding to your decision a few days earlier. Were you determined that she had no right to audit the legislature as she hopes to do? The legislature has resisted, basically saying what you said, that they have no right. Could you, in non-legalese, explain to people why you reached that conclusion?
Absolutely. So one, I want to be crystal clear, and I made this clear to constituents and many stakeholders. I, along with my team, absolutely believe in transparency, and I've been on the record on this show and other places pushing for the expansion of the public records law, including when I was on the city council in Boston. So transparency is critical. But my current job as Attorney General is to enforce the laws as they currently exist. And so after a thorough analysis, looking at the statute, looking at all of the audits and reports that the auditor sent us, looking at case law, previous memos from the office issued by my predecessors, it is abundantly clear that the auditor doesn't currently have the statutory authority to audit the legislature as she's choosing to do in a very expansive way. She obviously is pursuing the ballot initiative, which we have certified, and that is ongoing. But we made that crystal clear in a very detailed letter to the auditor. I, of course, called and spoke to her about that. And that's the position we're taking because it's not unclear. It's quite clear that that authority doesn't exist currently.
Can I read you one other piece of your 17-page letter that you sent to the auditor, and we hope you can explain this too, Attorney General. Should the initiative, meaning the ballot question that DiZoglio and others are pursuing, should the initiative become law, we may need to consider whether and to the extent to which constitutional limitations affect how the law would apply. What does that mean?
So unfortunately, the way our Constitution and the amendments to our Constitution are designed, there is a very strict process that our office goes through when approving and deciding whether or not a ballot initiative should be
Right.
certified. It does not question the constitutionality of that ballot question at the beginning. So folks could actually go through this long process, and then later, depending on how it ultimately is shaped, it could be determined by a court and someone who challenges the law to be unconstitutional. Our job is just to make sure through a very strict process that it is certified based on limitations or strict criteria, I should say, including whether or not it's appeared before, whether it's similar to something else on the books, you name it. And so we certified this ballot petition because it went through all of the check marks and all of the criteria successfully. And the question becomes, which there's a long process still, the auditor and her team have to get the signatures, of
Sure.
course. But after that, it could be shaped in different ways. The language could change. So once it ultimately becomes law, if that's the case, someone could challenge the constitutionality of it. And that we don't know just yet what that could look like until we see what it ultimately becomes.
But with all due respect, Attorney General, once the signatures are collected, the language that the voters vote on cannot change. The legislature can change anything they choose that's a law
That's right.
as opposed to constitutional amendment. But the ballot question itself, as worded, do you think there is something in the language which might make it unenforceable under the Constitution, even if the voters approve it?
Well, I'm not going to take that position just yet because it depends. And one,
On
it
what?
depends on who,
Oh, sorry,
it
go
depends
ahead.
on who decides to challenge it. There could be someone that decides to challenge it or not. Someone could challenge our certification process as well. But in addition, obviously, once the petition goes through, say, adequately, gets all the signatures, appears on the ballot, gets approved by the voters, it still has to go through the legislature at some point, right? And they could choose to adopt it, to come out with a different petition, or take no action. And then, of course, it changes the dynamic. So we will wait to see what it ultimately becomes and go from there. And I want to be clear, it's not that I am trying to be cute. We don't know what it will ultimately become. There is a long process when it comes to ballot initiatives, and I can't get ahead of that or what folks might ultimately do or what they won't do.
Okay,
But right now, we
I'm
went
sorry.
through the certification process. It's fully certified. And I know the auditor is on her way to gather signatures with the hopes of changing that law to allow for greater authority.
I'm going to stay on this just one more second, I promise. But having done these ballot things earlier in my life, you're right, it does go before the legislature. If they get the first round of signatures, they have no ability to change what the voters vote on. They could adopt the ballot question and it becomes law, and then it doesn't go to the
Right.
ballot at all. They could choose post-passage to change it, but they can't change the language at all, at least as far as I understand, that goes before the voters, should it go before the voters. And so I guess I'll ask a last time, and then I promise I'll move on. The language as drafted by DeZoglio and her team, do you see any constitutional problems with that, should it pass?
We will see. And I'm going to stick to my
Okay.
point. We will see. Because as you just explained, Jim, and I want the public to know this too, that there's a reason our current Constitution does not have us do that constitutional analysis of the actual language at the beginning, because there is a process that will unfold. And so we're not required to do that analysis. We have not done that analysis because we're not required to do that to certify the language in the ballot question. The criteria that is required is very limited. We've certified it. And there are steps. The legislature at some point could decide to pass it. They
Yep.
could also decide to offer a substitute, which they could definitely do. We don't know if they will. They could take no action at all, and the ballot question could proceed. So there are several steps along the way. Folks could challenge it or not. They could challenge the certification process or not. But every step of the way, we will make it crystal clear why we're taking the steps we take. Let me tell you this. We didn't make the rules, and so I want to be clear on that. But the constitutional analysis that you want to see right now, we're not required to do for legitimate reasons. And that's the Constitution as it is
Understood.
currently exists now. So we go through limited criteria that we have to evaluate. We let the process unfold, and we go from there.
Are you going to vote for it, by the way?
I don't know. And also, I will tell you this, I'm not taking a stance right now because I can't.
Okay.
And part of that is because we could be challenged in the certification process of this. So as you know, I have yet to take any positions on any ballot questions because there's still a lot of process to go forward.
Yeah.
But I also want to make this crystal clear.
Sure.
You know, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth on this. It's a very thoughtful decision. The letter was lengthy, but we tried not to make it too lengthy so the average person could understand what we were talking about. But we wanted to be crystal clear in the robust analysis we did, talking to the auditor, talking to the Senate, talking to the House, all stakeholders in a very thoughtful way, and taking all of the information they sent us and provided us. And we made this decision not lightly, but we made the decision based on the current law as it currently exists, and it is crystal clear. If it were something different, we would have made a different decision, but it's not.
We're talking to the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell.
Attorney General, ever get a chance to hear the state auditor perform her transparency song? It's pretty impressive. Did you hear up at the convention when she took to the stage and really blasted it out? She's like,
and I still don't have a song.
Yeah.
Even though someone may suggest that I sing "Let It Go."
Oh.
That's my sons. As they watch Frozen, they appreciate that song.
Good.
Let it go.
But I'm not doing that.
Okay. So, Attorney General, on a more serious note, I think a lot of people mistakenly believe their insurance company or the city or town they live in is going to pick up the cost of an ambulance ride should somebody have an emergency at home. But that is not often the case. Apparently, a lot of people in Massachusetts can't pay these ambulance bills, and the bills wind up in collections. So, you're looking into this. What'd you suggest?
That's
what
right.
do we need?
In our incredible health care division team, Sandy and Lisa, they know who they are, put just a lot of work, especially Lisa, into this report. And it is a very balanced report. On the one hand, it looks at the costs incurred by constituents and residents who need an ambulance for particular care and services, and also the burden that providers are facing when it comes to inflation, when it comes to rates that are not consistent. They also are saying and expressing to us they need considerable support. So we balance that in this cost trends analysis and make some policy recommendations through the Health Policy Commission and other stakeholders, including Health and Human Services, on the need for us to talk about these rates, the need for us to pull together a policy group and stakeholder group to address this issue. We can't do it alone. We just sort of put some information out there, but to pull together some stakeholder groups so that we can support municipalities in providing these services. We can work with insurers on providing rates that cover their costs of providing these services, but also do not require the resident to bear the burden or the brunt of these services. So more work to do here, but it is a step that we're taking in this direction because we know it's a major cost that folks are bearing. So what? When you don't want them to.
What kind of cost are we talking? We talk about several $100s or even more?
It could be hundreds of dollars. It could be thousands of dollars. And sometimes you don't know until after you've received your services, you've gone through some medical procedure, you've gotten maybe back home, and then you get a bill in the mail unexpectedly where you learn that it wasn't covered by your insurance provider. And now you have to come out of pocket in the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So we said that's just unacceptable, particularly in a Commonwealth, in a state where we pride ourselves on universal health care coverage. That means nothing if you have an insurance card that doesn't provide and cover the services that you need. So this report is detailed, but is making some recommendations so that these costs are no longer a surprise, helps us come up with what a rate might be. And we have to do some of this rate analysis with the federal government that's also looking at this, helps us support providers in municipalities. And there's some creative solutions and ideas out there and in the report that we can sort of push with all of these stakeholders, and we hope to continue to do that over the upcoming months.
Just one last thing on this. How could an ambulance ride cost thousands of dollars? That seems a lot. Is it distance or is it...
It depends. There's a range of factors, and actually that's not quite crystal clear yet. And it depends on who your insurance provider is. It depends on what your agreement and contract is with your insurance provider. It also could depend on what municipality you live in. There's a whole range of reasons why you may receive a bill that may not be covered by your insurance. And so this is why we stepped into this arena, to bring some clarity, to also begin to work with stakeholders with a sense of urgency to make sure these costs that are listed in your bill are fair and reasonable, that they are covered by insurance to the extent they can be. And so there's more work that we expect, but we just know that's the reality as it currently exists. But we have the opportunity to change that.
By the way, the reason I'm laughing is not at you, Attorney General. I'm laughing because Marjorie just said, how can they charge thousands of dollars? There's a woman you and I both know, Marjorie, who called me the other day, who said some contractors put a $50 piece of plastic on her wall and charged her $500. Who was that? Do you have any idea who that was?
That would be me, Jim. But
And,
I'm
Marjorie,
getting to
let
the
me ask
bottom
you,
of it, Attorney
Marjorie,
General.
how
Yep.
could they charge you $500?
Well, they did. They told me
Exactly.
that was the rate, and that was too bad.
I would call the Attorney General if I were you. Hey, Attorney, I don't mean hey, excuse me.
And there's a lot of inconsistency, but I think one thing we want to stress with this report and the work the office is doing is the economics. We know that affordability is the number one issue that we're talking about. Utility rates, insurance rates, they can't afford food, especially as the holiday is approaching, housing, you name it. And there's an active role the AG's office plays in addressing affordability issues from a reactive standpoint, of course, but we also want to be more proactive. And this is one tool that we have, this healthcare trends report, that allows us to do that.
You know, Attorney General, if you had an opportunity to read anything about the decision the Supreme Court made yesterday unanimously to adopt a code of ethics that theoretically will apply to them, have you had a chance?
Very little. I saw some of the analysis, or I should say, some of the information this morning. Don't know how they're going to enforce that, but I haven't been in the weeds because I've been in the weeds on other things.
Okay. Well, let me just say, here's from the Associated Press story the Globe carried. The policy agreed to by all 9 justices does not appear to impose any significant new requirements and leaves compliance entirely to each justice. So I guess the question for you,
That's
even
right.
if you haven't studied it, if I wanted to give, I don't know, Clarence Thomas a $250,000 RV, would he have to report it?
Based on the limited information from this report that I've received, the answer is no. And so, but I want to be clear. This is based on limited information. The biggest takeaway that I took from what I reviewed this morning is that there is no enforcement mechanism.
That's correct.
And we know, as residents have always said, if we're going to pass laws, we should make sure it is not only that we're able to enforce it, which is our responsibility, mine and my team, but also that there's equity in that, right? We ask our residents to comply with laws. We ask them to comply with certain rules that may go into the ethics realm. The same thing with elected officials here. The Supreme Court shouldn't be any different. But more to come on that.
Okay, Attorney General, we have spoken to the mayor practically, she'll be here at 12:30, almost every month about an internal affairs complaint pending against John, as he's called, Pepperjack Deneli. We've discussed it with you in June, and we discussed it with the police commissioner who was with us a couple of weeks ago. The police commissioner said that the reporting by the Globe that the internal affairs unit had found him guilty of having used excessive force and lied was untrue. In fact, with all due respect to Commissioner Cox, it was not untrue. He just sent it back and they reversed themselves. At least that's according to what he said. This guy, Deneli, who is cleared of excessive force, according to Globe reporting, has now been charged 9 times with excessive force. All 9 times he's been cleared. And I reference a discussion we had with you on June 27th. When we asked you if your own office's police accountability unit could look into things like this, we mentioned Deneli. This is before the determination by Commissioner Cox. You said your accountability unit is for higher systemic levels. You then suggested that maybe the post commission might be appropriate. You said absolutely that's what post is there for, and we've been stressing the individual officer cases. We don't have the manpower meaning. If we were to do this, my whole criminal bureau, et cetera, et cetera. You said the post commission, a statewide thing created during criminal justice reform, would be appropriate. Based on what you've read and know about the situation with Captain Deneli, should the post commission look into this?
Well, I think, that's a question for post. I will say this. We are taking police accountability cases very seriously. And I've stressed that from the very beginning as a candidate, and of course now as Attorney General, that while we may see incidents across the country, there are incidents here where we know bias still exists, excessive use of force. And so our job is to work with the Post Commission, which we're doing every single day, to support their work and their large mandate, and to make sure they have the resources they need to take on their responsibilities. And we do think they are best positioned to take on these individual officer cases. We don't have the manpower, the woman power. We don't have that currently in the AG's office. We don't have the resources, and we haven't been given those resources. So what we have been given is legal authority to take on pattern and practice investigations. That's the systemic stuff. The legislature specifically put that into the authority of the AG's office, and I'm grateful to them for doing that, and separated the post with a different responsibility on these individual cases. So we are working to get our police accountability unit off the ground. The legislature has given us some resources to get this unit and other new units off the ground, and I'm grateful for that. And once we find a director, which we are still actively looking for, we will begin to really focus on these types of cases. We do have some ongoing ones. I can't speak to those because they're ongoing and under investigation, but our goal is to work with police departments and law enforcement across the Commonwealth where there is bias or where there are cases like the one you just described, to say that we can do better in creating police departments. And let me be clear, police departments do exist in Massachusetts that do great work and that do not have bias, that have built trusting relationships with communities and get the job done. But we can look to those municipalities that do it well, and we can root out bias and other concerns to make sure all of our police departments operate with the highest levels of integrity and exceptionalism, credibility, and of course, are designed and working to build trust with community. So that's our mandate, and that's what we're going to do.
You know, I wouldn't have thought of this, I'm sorry, just one last thing, until you describe what your own police accountability unit is involved in. If I take away Denelicki's name, I describe to you there's a police department where an individual officer has been charged 9 times with excessive force, all 9 times found not to have used excessive force. That in the most recent, the 9th case, the Internal Affairs Unit concluded that that particular unnamed officer had used excessive force and lied about it. And then the police commissioner asked for a second look and they reversed themselves. Is that not the kind of systemic thing that the AG's police accountability unit might look at?
So it depends, right? If it involves just one officer, we think the Post Commission or municipality, through whatever mechanisms they have set up. I mean, I was on the city council when we passed the ordinance related to the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, cared deeply about those reforms. I chaired that committee that we push for as a collective on the city council to get things done. Each municipality has different infrastructure and structures to take on misconduct, to take on certain things. Some do not. But if it involves several officers in a particular municipality, for example, and we receive complaints from folks within that municipality or various stakeholders, this pattern and practice authority gives us just that, the opportunity to look into these cases and to launch an investigation. I just want to make sure as we take on this work that the office has the resources, the lawyers, the staff to really do this work well. And that's what we're working to do when we set up this police accountability unit. So more to come soon on that.
You know, Attorney General, a while ago now, and maybe you have an update for us, a bunch of inmates at Souza Baranowski's Secure Adjustment Unit, they submitted a letter to you about announcing they were going on a hunger strike. This was back at the end of October, but they wanted an investigation in one of the prison units where they said they had been mistreated by correctional officers. I know you talked about when you were running for office and as Attorney General and as a city councilor, actually, and president of City Council, about, and mayor, I forgot about that, as mayor as well. You talked about possible mistreatment of your own brother when he was incarcerated many years ago. I just wondered if you had any update on what's going on. They allege mistreatment, black eyes, pepper spray, that kind of thing, in a unit that was supposed to be providing some mental health services to the prisoners. Do you know any more about what's happening?
Thank you for the question and your framing. I do care deeply about the conditions of confinement. I care about accountability as well, because I've seen both sides, right? I have loved ones who are incarcerated for some horrific allegations, and it's sad and it's depressing to say the least. and I believe in accountability. I also had a loved one and a brother, of course, Andre, who died while in the custody of the DOC after not receiving adequate health care. And that is a real story. It's not made up. And so we are taking the letters we've received, not only from those who are housed there, but also advocates who have also sent their own letter pushing for some reform at Souza. So what we are actively doing is we just had a meeting, the team met with the legislators who are involved in this case, the legislators, I should say, who are involved and care about this. We're going to meet with the advocates as well. And my plan is actually to respond to the advocates, those at Souza and others, with the range of things that we want to take on when we say we need reform at the Department of Correction. And to frankly do that in partnership with our governor and EOPS and these appropriate agencies that oversee DOC, that oversee Souza, and do it in a way that improves the conditions in which folks are incarcerated so that we are reducing recidivism rates here in Massachusetts, to also take on other things that we know could be helpful to improving our correction system. So more to come on that, but I do take those allegations very seriously, and we are looking into it.
Attorney General, before you go, I know you and the mayor, Mayor Wu, who will be here at 12:30, have been working to make sure that everybody who is entitled to the second shot at loan forgiveness on the part of the President of the United States. Everybody knows his first shot, which was huge and comprehensive, was knocked down by the Supreme Court of the United States. But the second plan, I know, is confusing to a lot of people, and you and Mayor Wu have done your best to make sure that people understand what's available, how to apply for it. Could you fill in a few blanks and address the people who are confused about what they do?
Thank you so much for that question. So I, along with the team and Mayor Wu and Senator Warren and Congresswoman Presley, hosted a clinic for the City of Boston's employees with our student loan assistance unit out of the AGO to make sure that those folks had technical assistance in dealing with their loans. So yes, you are right. The Supreme Court struck down the wiping out of debt as articulated by President Biden. But I remind folks there are still resources available to them. So if you are a teacher, if you work for government, if you're a public service employee and you have student loan debt, absolutely contact our office because we are running webinars live or sometimes recorded. We're offering technical assistance in partnership with, say, Mayor Wu and other organizations to make sure that every public employee knows about the resources that could possibly wipe out their debt. And in addition to that, how to do that. So check out our website. Just reach out to us. I can't stress enough that we're helping residents all across the Commonwealth wipe out sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And I'm not making these numbers up. We have folks literally emailing us and thanking us because they had $200,000 in debt, and now they don't anymore because of our support and support of them and our help and assistance. So if you work in government, we were saying the Public Service Loan Interest Program is probably applicable to you, and you might have a loan that qualifies. But this is the biggest point I want to make. In order to be eligible for these various programs, folks have to consolidate their loans by the end of this year. If they do not consolidate their loans by the end of December, these programs, they are just not going to be eligible for. So the part of us are wanting to get out there and reach as many folks as possible is to spread that message, to encourage folks to reach out to our office, to check out our website, and to make sure that they know that they could be eligible, especially government employees.
What's the website again, Attorney General, please?
mass.gov/AGO.
mass.gov/AGO. Attorney General, we really appreciate your time. I know next month you'll be here to answer questions and that sort of thing. And from the listeners, we really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Attorney General.
Thank you, and enjoy the holiday season.
You too.
Of course, too.
We have been speaking with Attorney General Andrea Campbell. She'll be with us here at the Boston Public Radio for Ask the Attorney General in December, Tuesday, December 12th, 11 to 12. You can ask her questions then. We'll ask her ours, and hopefully we'll get a chance to ask more of yours. But thank you for the Attorney General. Coming up after a short break, NBC Sports NBC Sports Boston, Trini Casey is going to be here. Tell us a sad story of the poor Patriots. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank God for the Celtics, Jim. Thank God for the Celtics.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. 12:30 to 1:30 today. The mayor will be here for Ask the Mayor in person, answer your questions, ours, etc. Then, right after the mayor, Ben Mezrich, a very prolific, locally situated author who is huge. His new book, Breaking Twitter, is out, and he's got some breaking news about breaking Twitter that he'll share with us at 1:30. But now we're joined by Trenny Casey. Trenny is an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Good morning, Trenny.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hey, Trenny Casey. So I think no matter how you feel about football or the Patriots, I think a lot of us felt pretty bad looking at poor Mac Jones after he threw that interception,
Yeah.
looking up to heaven for like someone to save him. But Tara
How
Sullivan...
about Belichick with his hands over his face after he throws the interception?
Well, it was awful. I mean, it was just awful. But, you know, Tara Sullivan had an interesting piece, I thought. She writes for the Globe, of course, talking about how Belichick had really let him down by he replaced Josh McDaniels, who I guess was really good at what he did, offensive coaching, and she implies had less talented people, didn't have good offensive linemen, didn't have a good wide receiver, didn't have a good running back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she spreads the blame around to Belichick not supporting a quarterback who wasn't in Tom Brady's league to begin with.
And she's completely right. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, at some point you have to take personal responsibility for, you know, your play. And I'm not sure that Mac Jones has always done that. I think at times he sort of passes the buck. I mean, while he has the right to complain that last year he was left with Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator, and Joe Judge, a special teams coach, as his offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, this year he was given Bill O'Brien. And was he given the best weapons in the league? Absolutely not. Was he given the best offensive line in the league? Absolutely not. But you do have to make some adjustments and start to make plays, you know, when you're the quarterback of a team. And for Mac, I think having so much change, 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years, not having the big time weapons that his fellow quarterbacks often have on their team, it just got in his head and it sped him up. And I'm not saying Mac's not ever going to be successful, because I think there are tools there, but he's not going to be successful in New England. Like, it is time for him to go. Like, I was just before this call writing my show note for the TV side, and my whole thing is like, it's time for the Patriots to just like clean house. And I mean head coach, I mean quarterback, I mean president of player operations, or whatever the title they gave to Matt Groh. They need better player personnel people. They clearly need better talent evaluators. They need a head coach who is going to value offense, and they need a quarterback who fits in the system. It's going to take a while. Like, I think for Patriots fans, it's not going to be a quick fix. It's not like they're going to fire Bill Belichick, which I think they will do. Get rid of Mac Jones, which they may or may not do. He is on a pretty cheap contract. They might keep him as a backup and keep him on the roster, which I think is actually a detriment to him, though. It's more than just that. It is starting from like the bottom up in the front office and really looking at who's picking your players and how they're putting this team together. And that's going to take a while, because you're not just going to wave your magic wand and get a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the draft next year. Like, it's going to take some time, and you need to put weapons around him. You need to put weapons around that guy, and you can't get everything in one draft. They do have a lot of money, though, to spend in the offseason. So
speaking of Belichick, the reason I'm smiling is not at Trenny, even though I'm very fond of Trenny. She brought us a wonderful gift back from Italy. It was
She
fabulous.
did.
They
Those
were really
wonderful
tasty.
chocolates with the wafers
The
inside.
reason I'm laughing is when we're talking about Belichick's future, Trenny, you may be aware of this. When Marjorie and I and our team meet in the morning about what we're going to discuss that day, if I pick a topic that we discussed 2 months ago for 20 minutes, Marjorie says, we can't discuss that again because we discussed it 2 months ago for 20 minutes. Sports radio, for the last 6 months, every day for 4 hours, discusses whether Belichick's going to be fired today,
That's right.
tomorrow, the end of the season.
And you mentioned that they
Never,
talk about the same thing all the time, about
every day
150
for 4
times
hours.
a year.
Okay, fine. But here's the issue.
mean,
here's the issue.
In our defense, like, the whole world isn't falling apart around us, so we have less things to nitpick about.
Okay,
That's
but
right.
here's my
That's
favorite.
right.
We always talk, you and I, and Marjorie, but you and I specifically always talk about, was it Brady or Belichick? Obviously it was Brady. And while we all agree the greatest quarterback of all time, I would argue he has proven yet again he will be the worst sportscaster of all time if he does his Fox News thing for $37 million a year. Former Patriots who love Belichick, the McCourty twins, I've heard in the last few days, say it's a disaster. Teddy Bruschi, his star linebacker, disaster, he should resign. Here's Tom Brady on his I didn't know he had a podcast. On his podcast.
Oh, yeah, Jim Gray. He's on that Jim Gray.
Jim Gray. Oh, I didn't know. Okay, it's called Let's Go. Here's Brady's analysis after this most recent pathetic loss. Here you go.
Patriots, they're in a tough stretch, just not playing with the kind of confidence that you've always seen. And, obviously Coach Belichick, I don't think he's coaching any different now than the way he coached when we were undefeated. There's a lot of things that need to go right in order to win and succeed. And, I think when you lose, the more I sit back and watch, everyone wants to celebrate when you win as an organization. Everyone's responsible. And the same true, everyone's responsible when you lose too.
What is that? I mean, what is he saying about what? Go ahead,
I will say this. I don't think he's wrong. I think Bill Belichick is coaching the exact same way he coached when his teams were undefeated. But guess what? Bill Belichick doesn't have Tom Brady. Bill Belichick doesn't have Julian Edelman. He doesn't have Rob Gronkowski. He doesn't have Randy Moss. He doesn't have, Gerard Mayo as your sort of quarterback of the linebackers. He does not have Darrelle Revis, manning the cornerbacks. You don't have Devin McCourty, in his prime at safety. He is coaching exactly the same way he did, but he's coaching with far lesser players. And that all of that falls on him because he is the end-all be-all of player personnel. He is the GM and head coach of the New England Patriots. And so their complete lack of attention to the offensive side of the ball is why they are in this mess in the first place. Bill Belichick, from what I understand on the inside, has always thought that you can basically you could put me back at quarterback, and he could coach me up, and it would find a way to win. But that's not how the NFL works anymore. You need top end. Like Gardner Minshew is not a very good quarterback. The Indianapolis Colts are not a very good team. Yet every once in a while, Gardner Minshew was able to make a play on Sunday and throw a touchdown because he has some weapons around him. Mac Jones doesn't have that.
Well,
everybody knew that they needed an offensive lineman, that they desperately needed a tackle. Everyone knew that they needed a better wide receiver, a top-end wide receiver this offseason. And instead we got, I hired Bill O'Brien. I was told I had to hire Bill O'Brien. So here we go. He's going to fix the offense. But there's only so much you can do. You can't always make chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what.
That's right.
Has Tom Brady ever criticized anybody publicly for anything?
No.
Exactly. No. I mean, really,
yeah, you can't exceed
man
in sports radio or sports criticism on TV unless you're going to trash people.
No, not trash. You got to be honest.
Well,
you call it what it is.
There's a lot of trashing that goes on.
There is a lot of trashing
on the best of those shows.
Sports talk radio. There is a lot of trash, right? Like you got to fill 4 hours,
right?
But the best analysts in football, and even Tony Romo, I think, has finally come around on this. Now he's been out of the league long enough. Because in the last couple of years, I haven't really liked listening to Tony Romo. You have to at least be constructively critical. If you see a play that everybody knows is a bad play, a bad throw, if you're a receiver, you're not reaching out your arms to make a catch, you're kind of alligator arming it. If you're a defensive player who's coming up short and not going all out to defend a ball, you have to call those things out. You don't need to attack guys personally, and you don't need to trash them. But you do need to say you have to be honest. Otherwise, why do I want to listen to you? I don't want to listen to Sunshine and Skittles the whole time. When most football fans are watching a game, they know what is garbage versus what is good. And if you try to tell them that what they're looking at is just a tiny little mistake and everyone knows that it's like repetitive, like one of the biggest things that's bugging Patriots people this year is every time these national crews come in to call these games, they're like, well, this isn't what a Bill Belichick coach team looks like. They're disciplined. And all of us who've been watching the Patriots since Tom Brady left are like, what team have you been watching? Do you never watch Patriots football? Because they haven't been disciplined since like 2018.
Okay, I would like to point out that the texters are telling us we should shut up about the Patriots and start talking more about the Celtics and the Bruins.
We'll get to them. The season just started.
I know, but the Celtics.
They are both doing really well. Big win for the Celtics last night against the Knicks. They were down at halftime. They looked overmatched. That was a good, gritty win last night from the Celtics. And the Bruins have been surprisingly good. I think everyone thought they were going to fall off this year without Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci and the way they fell on their face last year. But then these young kids, I don't know if it's sustainable with the young kids, but they have found a little bit there, and they definitely have good goaltending. So, yes, keep an eye. We do have teams in this town that are succeeding.
We do.
And they both play at the
It's not fun to talk about the teams that are succeeding. Why would we do
Absolutely
that?
not.
I mean,
Well, I
really.
find it a lot of fun, actually. I get all excited in the basketball season.
No, it is pretty exciting.
I mean,
must admit.
but to Jim's point, there's only much you can say when a team's really good. Like, wow, they're really good. That doesn't make for like a compelling talk show.
Yeah,
We're
it doesn't-
talking
that's
to
true.
Trenny Casey.
So this is a great story. Everyone knows about the horrible mass shooting up in Lewiston, Maine. 18 dead, 13 wounded. Lewiston's high school, apparently during the, when they were looking for when the manhunt for the shooter was on, the high school parking lot was used as a staging area for all the law enforcement people and the media people, etc. But now that high school has got something huge to celebrate up there. Tell us.
Yeah, their boys soccer team won a state title.
Yeah.
And they've been really good, really the last 5 to 10 years. It's a program that's really come up. But again, and I know we talked about this last week when there was a football game that Lewiston won, a regular season football game, and bringing the town together. But, again, all these kids felt like they were carrying the weight of an entire community on their shoulders, and they went out and performed beautifully. It came down to extra minutes. They had pressure on them. It wasn't like it came easily and they were up 3-0 early on in this one. They had to fight and claw to win this game. And the other cool part of this story is how, I didn't know this about Lewiston, but in the last 10 years or so, they've taken on a lot of Somali immigrants.
Huge numbers.
And refugees, huge numbers. And those kids, obviously, they grew up playing soccer from the time that they could walk, in their villages. And these kids have come and transformed the soccer program. And to see the town rally around those kids who, are from somewhere else and have made Lewiston their home, and for all of them to celebrate, and again, just have a respite from everything that they've dealt with. I just thought it was a really beautiful story. And it's just really nice to see that these high school kids are able to give something to the community in a time of need.
By the way, just to extend what you're saying, I love that part of the story. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20% of the population of Lewiston are Somali immigrants. And
15 to 20%, wow.
I hope
That's
that
a
the
big
leadership
percentage.
of the city is kind, because Margie and I are reading a story that not too long ago, prior mayors said about them and to them, you come here, you come and you accept our culture, you leave your culture at the door. The mayor said that nearly the Somalis, nearly all of whom are Muslim, should slow down their migration to Lewiston. And now it seems they're probably pretty happy that these Somali families are coming in large
and listen
numbers.
to this quote from one of the players who said, told the local paper up there, we just wanted to give back to the city with all they have gone through, which is a pretty great statement. And if you came from Somalia as a refugee, you've gone through a lot yourself. Right?
I was just going to say, you think, these kids from Somalia, they come and they're children when they come here, and they have seen war and death. That fortunately for Lewiston, they've never, unfortunately for them, they recently had to experience, but it hasn't been something that is daily. And these kids, I think, have gone through trauma and probably have a unique point of view to how to dig deep and get through that trauma and have and be lifted up by their community, because unfortunately they've experienced it, and that's why they're in the United States. And also to that mayor who says they need to leave their country or leave their traditions behind.
That's the former
Guess what?
mayor.
If they leave their traditions behind, then they're not playing soccer for you. Then they are not. Then they're not. They're not bringing like that's like the least of it. But also, we can learn so much from other cultures and people who are different than us. Like, not everything we do here is the exact right way of doing it. Like, get out in the world and travel and see how other people do things and adopt. Like I think what makes like mixed blended areas great is that everybody, whether you come from different places in the US with different traditions or you come from different parts of the world, like there are some really cool things that you would miss out on if you think you should just do what you've always done. So
that's right.
So
Trenny is a world traveler now. She just came back from Italy, so she's a world traveler.
By the way, did you tell people yesterday I was going to the Turks and Caicos?
Oh, no.
I got an email from someone asking.
No, that was
recommendations.
Callie.
That was Callie.
That was Callie Crossley.
We may
She's
have
going to Turks
misspoken.
and Caicos.
But we think you should go to Turks and
Should go.
Caicos.
I'm like, I wish I could
Yeah,
go. But
we should
Well,
all go. So Everett.
No, forget Everett.
we can't
Forget
go right
Everett.
now.
Forget Everett.
Okay.
Here, Trenny, I want to get
Forget
your
Everett.
opinion.
They're getting a soccer stadium.
Do
we
you
hope.
think that they're going to be calling the Red Sox the Saudi Sox in the next couple of years? Now, we don't know if John Henry's going to sell. We've had this discussion with you in the past. This is a Washington Post story. This is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's not much, so you'll tamp it down a little bit. Story in the Washington Post the other day basically says the Saudis, the Qataris, and others in the Middle East are going to essentially buy every sports team in every league in every sport that is popular. Is that not a fair? I mean, it's pretty close.
I would say it's a slight exaggeration
But
that
not
they're going to
much.
buy everything up. But they certainly, this article in the Washington Post was interesting because we've heard about, like, you know, last week we talked about how Saudi Arabia has expressed interest in buying into men's and women's tennis.
Tennis, right, yeah.
And of course, we know that they have already bought into the PGA.
Yep.
I did not know that it was Middle Eastern. I think it's Qatari money, oil money, and royal family money that is a part owner in a bunch of teams in Washington and DC. The Mystics, the Wizards, I think just the Mystics and the Wizards, and maybe the Capitals, their hockey team. But that there has been this infiltration. There's so much money to be had in the Middle East from these oil-rich countries, and they want to get into professional sports. And so they've gotten into Formula One. They've gotten into golf. They're pushing to be more involved in tennis, which in a sense they already are. There's the Qatari Open, which takes place in Qatar. You know, you see guys like, it's not Lionel Messi, it is Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo plays for a Saudi soccer team, so they're throwing all of this money.
$200 million
a
year is his salary.
And there is no restriction in Major League Baseball, NBA, or NHL for ownership. The only league right now that does not allow sovereign wealth, sovereign money to be invested in their league is the NFL. But that's the big question. How long does that last until this money starts to infiltrate the NFL?
Well, by the way, there are
brings with it
rumors. Did you read the
of
story
questions.
this morning that the rumor is that Bill Belichick will be coaching the Saudi Patriots next year with
Another
a 12-year
reason
contract?
to get rid of fossil fuels. Stop this.
Hashtag sarcasm, Jim. Hashtag
You know, I
sarcasm.
sort of live
but no,
in the
it's
real
a real
world.
issue.
But the issue that arose with this live golf thing, which we discussed with you ad nauseum about the Saudis, they treat women like crap. LGBTQ people, it's illegal to even exist, much less engage in normal loving behavior. They assassinated Jamal Khashoggi from the Washington Post, and as long as they ante up enough money, everybody, has anybody other than Tiger Woods turned down their money so far?
Lionel Messi.
Oh,
Lionel
Messi did. You're right, Messi.
Messi did. Rory McIlroy did.
Good for him.
But
It's
not.
pathetic.
I mean, I think also, and he's a French player. Mbappe.
the guy in the World Cup final
The
on the
guy in
other
the
side
World
from
Cup.
Messi, right?
I think they
Yeah.
came after him as well. He turned down that money. So there are some athletes and some pretty big names like Tiger Woods, Lionel
Obviously,
Messi.
that's huge. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the guys, and you've noticed this, like Phil Mickelson, even though he's a big name, no pun intended, back nine of his career, right? Brooks Koepka was really struggling in the PGA. But I think where these leagues, and in particular the leagues with the individual athletes, are going to have to maybe make some changes on the European and American models, is the reason a lot of these athletes want to go play for these Middle Eastern countries is they pay far more money for less work. So you play, and like tennis is a big one. They want them to play in fewer tournaments. Golf, it's not as many days. It's sort of a team format. You get paid a ton of money to play in a third of the amount of events that you have to play in here, and it's guaranteed money. Whereas in the United States and Europe, like let's say you're Brooks Koepka, or even you're Rory McIlroy, and you have a bad weekend, right? And so you go play in a tournament and you don't make the cut, you don't get paid at all.
Yeah.
In the way it's set up, in live golf, and I think in these tennis tournaments, is that you're paid money just to kind of show up. It's like a salary. And so The one good thing that might come out of it is maybe it forces US and European sports to just kind of take a look at their revenue model, again, particularly in individual sports. But the fear always is if you come in with a ton of money and you have a short career, especially in football, like I'm very curious to see if they're going to get their hands on American football, because if they do, that could drastically change things, because so few players can make a lot of money in that league, and so few players have long careers. And to make a ton at once, you might start getting some of the best college athletes.
Trenny, we got to go. Plus, the Saudis have murdered an American journalist in 5 years.
Okay, we've been speaking with NBC Sports anchor and reporter, NBC Sports Boston, Trenny Casey. Thanks a lot, Trenny. Coming up after the new news, media maven and attempted coyote attack survivor, Sue O'Connell is here. She'll tell us all the nice things Donald Trump's late sister had to say about the former president before she passed away. And also she'll tell us about poor Maud, who swallowed a raisin. Maud would be her dog. She's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
What we try to do is to hone in on any special skills that, not even just migrant families, but any, person, and then building from there. We do also offer workforce development training. We have education and training programs.
Here's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. And we want you to know in about a half hour, 12:30, the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, will be with us. She'll take our questions and yours right here at the Boston Public Library. And later, Ben Mezrich, the great author who's written so many things, The Social Network, all about Facebook, etc., is going to be here to talk about his latest book, Breaking Twitter, about, of course, Elon Musk. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, and by the way, I'm assuming on the national news, which neither Marjorie nor I listened to because we were doing something else, has been reported, but just in case it has not, CNN is reporting that the president, as in Joe Biden, says a deal to free the hostages held by Hamas is, quote, going to happen. So as that develops throughout the next couple hours, we'll bring you the latest. We're joined now live at the library by our media maven, someone the Boston Globe calls a local woman, which she is, actually, so it's accurate. Of course, it's Sue O'Connell. She is co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, co-host at Issue every Sunday on NBC 10 after Meet the Press. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day, good day.
To you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Let's first things first. I understand your beloved dog,
Oh, yeah.
Maud,
Oh, yeah.
is now under duress, having eaten some raisins.
Yeah, so the worst part of the story, beside the $3,000 bill I'll be getting
No.
from Angel.
Oh, you don't know
yeah.
yet.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
yes. Oh, yes.
Wait a minute. Did you get pet insurance?
I did get pet
And
insurance.
but
covers
it
nothing.
doesn't cover
Covers
anything.
I
nothing.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not even pretending that it's going to cover more than a couple of
good.
bucks. But so in the second part of the story, beside the fact that Maud is in distress and hospitalized at the Fabulous Angel, and I'm sure people say,
$3,000?
yeah, is that it's all my fault, and I can't blame anybody
Why?
else for
What'd you
this.
do?
I came into the house and I put a bag of groceries down on the floor, and then got distracted. And Maud, who had just eaten dinner, decided to go in, and I had to make a special trip because people in my house can only eat certain English muffins, so I had to go get Thomas's raisin English muffins.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Left them on the floor, and Maud got in there. And of course, I'm sitting on the couch and hear rustling and think, oh, she's just in the recycling. Who cares? So I don't get up, and then I see she has eaten six raisin English muffins. And then I sat down and thought, well, that means at night I'll be out taking her for a walk. And then it dawned on me that raisins are grapes. And grapes are not good for dogs.
No, they are not.
are toxic for dogs.
Toxic.
Oh, my God.
And so then I called the poison control, which cost $90, and they said, yeah, just go right into Angel. So I spent the eve of my birthday in Angel.
Oh.
Yes, happy birthday to me.
Happy
and
birthday.
when they gave me the bill, they did wish me a happy birthday
That's
because
nice.
it was then 1 o'clock. But Maud, we hope, will be out tomorrow. Raisins and grapes, toxic for your
Yeah.
dogs. So
Chocolate. Keep the dog away from chocolate,
they're less
too.
concerned about the chocolate.
Are they less concerned about the
it's
chocolate?
Really, we say chocolate, but it's really there you
Well,
go.
we wish
the breaking
Maud,
news.
the
Breaking
best.
news.
Can we
Some
go-
candidate should run for office on a fixed pet insurance slate,
Yeah,
it seems
it's
to me,
crazy.
because it's not, you find that it doesn't cover a whole lot of things. But speaking of running for office, a lot of candidates, LGBTQ candidates, have been elected. Tell us about this.
So we've been talking about, the victories across the country that the Democrats had, even in light of that poll from the New York Times showing Biden's second to almost everybody or third to everybody in the Democratic Party. But there were a number of races that LGBTQ people won across the country, and not just big high-profile races, but also school committee races, city council races. Of course, here in Massachusetts, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 LGBTQ candidates who got elected. But the big story is in Virginia, which, of course, all eyes are on because of it being a purple state, where Danica Rome won to be the first out trans state senator in the entire South. And not only is that a big story, but her opponent was incredibly anti-trans and had a huge amount of money, a huge bank that really fired against her in ads. And in Virginia, we see that she overcame that and she got to victory. In Pennsylvania, we have the first city council person that was out. So it's an off-election year, meaning that there's no federal offices up for election. But compared to other odd years, the LGBTQ candidates did exceptionally well. All of them were Democrats, and I think this is another one of those little puzzle pieces as we look into 2024.
You do wonder. I mean, obviously we've seen the blowback from the abortion ruling by the Supreme Court, but today everybody's got somebody in their family, or they're gay themselves, or their next door neighbor or something. I think this is another one of those areas that the GOP has totally missed the moment.
And also on the local races too. I mean, when you can fight book bans and be concerned about all these things, but in some of these local races, the people just want you to take care of the local issues that your job takes care of, right? So if you're on the school committee and the reading levels are low, or the school lunch program is in trouble, or the graduation rate is low, they don't care. Most parents don't care what little book you are and aren't reading, or if drag brunch is going to poison your minds. They want you to get the scores up and get the kids a good education, or they want the city council. I say all the time, Boston City Council can talk about any issue they want internationally, but I got a lot of rats in my neighborhood in Roxbury. Can we take care of that? So I think that this is reflecting that.
Do you have a lot of rats?
I do. It's incredible. The rat situation in Boston is now gone to the other side. We've tipped over. I'm not even afraid of them anymore.
What's it about?
I think, and you can talk to Mayor. I've talked to Mayor Wu. Yeah, I talked to Mayor Wu about this last time I saw her. Actually, I think that it's time that we have to mandate barrels and not just plastic bags, because even if it's the heavy-duty plastic bags.
They're all eating from them, and also, people leave them out for days.
Well, I know that they're pretty good about enforcement about when you can put your trash out and when it has to go in, but also the what do you call it when you put the food scraps?
Recycle.
Composting. The
composting.
If we can get more of that, which I know the mayor's in favor of, I think that will also help.
Lots of places are composting. I thought Boston was composting.
It is, but we need more of it, and I think we need more opening to apartment buildings.
Yeah, because those are in big plastic.
She's coming up.
Those are in plastic containers.
Yeah, the little
pretty
green
hard
plastic
to bite through.
Yeah.
Although I have found rat holes in one of my recycle bins. It was
Listen,
very
there's
distressing.
a reason they're so successful, the
I tell
rats.
you, they're little persistent little critters, aren't they?
Okay, so Donald Trump's oldest sister, who's a former federal appellate judge, died, Marianne Trump Barry. Now, the first time we brought her up on the show, let me remind people, we've told the story before. In 2016, candidate Trump calls into our radio show. And I believe we were the first people to ever ask him if there were criteria that he had established, a litmus test for Supreme Court justices. And candidate Trump said, yes, I have. They have to be bright, was his first word, and they have to be pro-life. And unfortunately, we only had 10 minutes, so we couldn't do a follow-up. But the woman who was next in line on some other radio station got to hear our interview. So her first question was, you just said to another radio station you wanted to pick bright, pro-life judges to the district and appellate federal courts. Could you give us an example of somebody who you would choose? And he said, of course I can. And he said, I would pick my sister. Her name is Marianne Trump Barry. Now, what was wrong with that, Marjorie, when he said he would pick his sister?
She's pro-choice.
She's pro-choice. So either he did not know or he did not care.
Or he forgot that he was not pro-choice because he was pro-choice.
Now, apparently she died a couple days ago, and we're sorry about that. But before she died, she talked to Donald Trump's niece, who he was not very fond of, nor she of him. Here are a couple of things. We'll start with, well, we have two of them. We'll start with Marianne Trump Barry calling her brother a liar. Here's the first.
It's goddamn tweet and the lying. Oh my God, I'm talking too freely, but you know, the change of stories, the lack of preparation, the lying, the holy. But he's appealing to the base, what they're doing with the kids at the border. I mean.
Okay, so that was not the worst she said about him. She went on to say to Mary Trump, the niece, something about him being a brat when he was little. Here's this.
But he was a tough kid, right?
He was a brat.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't mean tough at all.
They said
I mean, a brat or temper tantrums,
I drove him around New York City to try to get him into college. And he went to Fordham for 1 year.
and then he got into University of Pennsylvania. I guess he had somebody to take the exams. No way.
That's his sister
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
things. So what's your reflection on their relationship or her passing?
Well, I mean, she told the truth about her brother, but it in the great Trump fashion, it also glosses over her role in the family. You know, she kind of comes out smelling like a rose. She was became judge basically because Roy Cohn,
Yeah.
the great famous Roy Cohn, paved the way for her to become a judge. And when she
With
retired,
Reagan? Was that who
Yeah,
was
under
with
Reagan,
Reagan?
under
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, and she resigned because she was under investigation for being involved in the Trump tax schemes that have been going on since creation, and resigned under a cloud of suspicion. And some people have said, you know, everybody pays attention to what the criminal haphazard approach that Donald Trump takes to doing things illegal, but she was actually the mastermind that was involved in a lot of what the family did and got them around a lot of the law and used her influence. So genetically, she might have had a soft spot in her heart for children who were ripped away from their parents at the border and didn't want to, you know, see any harm come to them.
However,
but on the other hand, she also seemed to be in the same criminal enterprise world as Donald Trump. But to tell the truth about him, and she probably every day just looked at the TV and shook her head and said, kind of like Jeb Bush does, I think, just like, what happened? How did he get there when I'm obviously the smart one?
Yeah, well, you can't be perfect. You know, you can't
be.
You can't get everything right. She did. I think I told the story before, but I went down when a couple of my kids were living in New York City. We went down on Easter to go to church down there on Easter. Went to the St. Ignatius, this snazzy, gorgeous cathedral in New York City, and the priest got up there. It's a Jesuit parish. The priest gets up there and basically trashed everything Donald Trump was doing without using his name, saying if you're a big Catholic, you got to look at what this. If you're a big Catholic, you got to do that. She was a pro-choice, as many Catholics are, big Catholic. So I'm looking at the program. They put the program in, thanking people who put together the Easter lilies or donated. You know, people might have spent $20 for Easter lilies or $50. Then there was his name of someone who spent, it was either $3,000 or $5,000 to donate to the Easter Mass, which is a lot of money. And then I looked at her name, Marianne Trump Barry, and I thought, could this be the president's sister who's donated several grand to the Mass at which her brother is being cut to smithereens by the priest?
That speaks to her power. There you go.
Well, also, she obviously had some extra money available because of tax fraud. So she was able to donate.
At least she gave it back, Jim. Let's look at it that way.
That's
We'll
right.
be charitable.
She gave a lot of money
passed.
to a lot of Catholic
Since
things.
she passed, she used that money she got.
So we had a little experience yesterday, didn't we, Jim?
About what?
Didn't we have a
actually, we had a
cousin?
caller one day.
Yeah, caller.
You gave it away. There it is. Okay.
Oh,
we were
shoot.
talking about
I didn't hear what you said.
the
Oh, good.
moral
Shouldn't hear me.
code of decorative pillows. And this woman
Yeah.
calls
Oh, boy.
in. Excellent caller. Here is this woman who called. Her name is Robin. Here it is.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Sue O'Connell's cousin here.
Oh, my God.
Is your mother a bookie?
There you go. What was Sue like as a child? How would you describe her?
You know, I hate to say this, but I didn't really know her as a child because I married her cousin.
Right. And what do you think of her?
Fun and still is.
She is a lot of fun.
I love Sue.
We'll tell her you called. Robin from Shirley. Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to say about Robin and her decorative pillows?
Yes, one of my many cousins-in-law, Robin Koss, my cousin Neil, my late cousin Neil's wife. Neil was an author, and she actually was here, and you actually said hello to her once several years ago. But yes, part of my extended family of cousins that support me and then send me terrible DMs telling me how bad I am at things. It's great to be one of the youngest of like my 28 cousins. I'm the second youngest. And so they feel very compelled to send me long lists of things that I do wrong. Robin is less like that because she married in. So.
That's okay. That's okay.
That was actually a beautiful call from her. It was
she's
really
a good
nice.
friend.
Yeah.
So they discussed this on the Culture Show, our new Culture Show. Jared Bone is the host, and it's every Friday. It's going to be every day, I think, starting in December. The Grammy Award. So this is kind of a nice tribute, I think, to Tracy Chapman, who many years ago became...
35 years ago.
Yeah, 35 years ago.
Incredible.
Performed a song called Fast Car. And should we play Tracy first?
Let's play the reason it's in the news now is Luke Combs.
And we can decide whose version we like better. Here's Luke Combs' version of Fast Car.
By the way, I think it was a beautiful cover. I mean, really beautiful cover. And here's Tracy Chapman, the original from 1988. I like them both. Hers is beautiful.
Oh, hers wins hands down.
Yeah, and Tracy, of course, from the area also used to. You
She used to busk around,
busk over
yeah.
at Harvard Square.
Yeah.
You could see her at someplace else over in the financial district on a regular basis. You know, this speaks a lot to how many of us, all everyone around the world, puts music into genres.
Yeah.
Like it's a country song, it's a folk song, it's an R&B song. But when some of the greatest songwriters write a song like Dolly Parton, I Will Always Love You, which she had a hit with, and then of course Whitney Houston had a huge with it, and Jolene, another great song which has been covered numerous times. So, there was a lot of concern when he covered this that his politics didn't match what Tracy Chapman might have intended originally for the song. But again, a great song is a great song, and I agree that both versions are great. Hers is better, his is excellent, and it's a great opportunity for her to win a country songwriting
Song
award.
of the Year.
Isn't it number
Song of the
one
Year.
also on the country charts?
And it was number one for her as well
Oh, I didn't
30
know
years
that.
ago, which was this really
Beautiful
out-of-the-box, you're competing with Cher singing on a ship in a thong, and then you had Tracy Chapman's Fast Car. So it was,
Well,
it was
by the way,
great.
she had a lot of great songs.
Yes.
Is she performing now? I don't.
I don't think she has been. She really just sort of didn't, like a lot of folk artists, and I put her kind of, again, I just gave my speech about not being in a genre, but like a lot of folk artists, they don't want to get so big that they get hindered by fame, I think. And she had a number of albums out, and I think she had another song that charted, but she really just has played smaller venues, and
She's brilliant.
she is brilliant.
And we should say that the Fast Car originally in '89 earned her a Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, Record and Song of the Year nominations, and she also won for Best New Artist and Best Contemporary Folk Album that year. So
she
now
was
it's
in all genres.
country.
She's country, folk, and pop.
Country, folk, yeah.
So we haven't talked about Taylor Swift for about an hour, so let's talk about her. So I would say I was watching, I'm embarrassed to say, I got up and watched the Patriots game. I have no idea why. Early on, I'm not even that interested. It isn't just because it was a rotten game, but I think that was it. It was a Germany thing, whatever. And I would say, I'm making up a number, I don't know, if there were 40 commercials during the show, Travis Kelce was in 50 of them. I mean, every single commercial.
I would like to announce I'm dating Taylor Swift right now because I would like to be able to launch my career.
Is the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, who everybody knows is the current boyfriend of Taylor Swift. Now, we've all heard about how she comes to a town. The economic boost to the community is astronomical. This is another great slant on. She goes, I think, to Argentina. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell people what happened in Argentina.
So she was planned to play in Buenos Aires, and there was a weather delay. I mean, the weather was so bad. I mean, as you know, she played here in Gillette in the rain a number of times, but she had concerns, so she unfortunately had to cancel or postpone because of bad weather. And the airline, LATAM Airlines, which is the largest airline in South America, understood that there were people flying from all over the world to go to this Taylor Swift concert. It wasn't just folks in Argentina, and they waived in advance as soon as they heard that she had made the announcement any of the change fees, and sent out this lovely email saying, we know your plans have changed. That's why today we're updating our flexibility policy so those who had a flight can change without any fines or fare difference until next February. Now, I love that they didn't even mention Taylor Swift, but getting the wrath of the Swifties, right, and having all these people, all sorts of adults and kids and families who have spent all of this money to go see Taylor Swift, if they had any challenge with this airline would have been out of business, I guarantee, within a week and a half. Now, why would you care about this? The other thing you need to know is that the Taylor Swift fans, they have this bracelet culture where they make friendship bracelets, just like you would go to Michael's or the stuff, with little names on it, and they share them at the concerts. They're now making I voted, get out to vote bracelets.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, good for her.
So the power of this group, this power of this amazing demographic, as you know, she once came out about her elections in Kentucky and
Tennessee.
Tennessee, and changed the outcome there. She's
Well, but she didn't change the Marsha Blackburn race. She endorsed the other one, and Blackburn
right, but the number of voter
Voters,
registrations
so
that has gone up, and that's part of the Taylor wave that is moving forward. So basically, whatever Taylor wants, Taylor gets. If the Swifties feel they're unfairly being fined for something, they'll waive it, and hopefully she can corral and use this power for good.
Now, our media maven, Sue O'Connell, I know you are also very good about predicting the future of relationships. What do you think about Taylor and Travis? Think it's going to last, or what? She's gone through a lot of boyfriends.
She has gone through a lot of boyfriends, but this boyfriend is different because he's just famous enough. He's not like a Jake Gyllenhaal or a Harry Styles or the other guys that she's dated.
John Mayer.
She did indeed. He left her on a boat. There's a song about it.
There is?
Yeah, there's actually a picture of her waiting for him to show up on a boat.
No.
Yeah.
And he never comes?
He didn't show up.
Okay, good.
So, and he's an American, which I think makes a difference as well. You know.
So was the Kennedy kid in America.
Yeah, but
he was only 19 or something.
Yeah, he was only 19, and she showed up at the wedding and totally took all the attention off the bride. She still owns a house in Rhode Island. I know nothing about Taylor Swift. I don't know why you asked me.
Apparently you do,
Anyway,
don't
She does still have the house in Rhode Island.
she does still have the house in Rhode Island.
Where is it?
I think it's at Watch
Watch
It's
Hill.
right next to
Oh,
the
that's
Kennedy.
right.
I don't know anything
Watch
about
Hill.
Taylor Swift.
With that beautiful
I only
summer
know where
house
a house
hotel.
is that
Yes.
hasn't
Westerly,
sold.
Watch Hill.
Whatever.
That
I think-
place is gorgeous.
I think
you can't
there's
afford
some-
to stay there. I think it's like $1,500 a
Right,
night or something.
right.
But you can eat lunch on the
Very
porch.
sad.
It is
if you have a
beautiful
peanut
there.
butter
But I think
sandwich.
there is a future here for this relationship. I don't know what it means. But, you know, you take a risk because if they break up, you're going to be the
Get a song.
entire
He
does.
content of the next album.
He does have a huge personality.
How do
Yes.
you know he has a huge? The
Well, the way he
commercials,
dresses.
the
Because you can
scripts.
tell him
You
by
can
the
tell.
commercials.
You can tell by what he wears. You can tell he
That
enjoys
is
the limelight.
ridiculous.
Oozing confidence. I saw him do Saturday Night Live.
He's a
Did
great
stand up
football
there.
player.
That's right. Well, we just played Tom Brady, the greatest football player of all time. What kind of personality does he have?
You know, speaking of SNL, there's nothing worse than mentioning a skit and not having the sound. Did you both hear Nate Bargatze's George Washington thing a few weeks ago?
Oh my gosh, about the metric system?
Maybe the funniest 4.5 minutes
yes, you played
I've
it
ever
for
heard
history.
in my life. Nate Bargatze, who's a comedian from
Jimmy, you shouldn't
Tennessee,
be
if you haven't heard
mentioning this
no,
and not
I
playing
Go
sound.
hate
find
when
it. Go
people do
find it
this.
on YouTube because
Just
it was
Google
brilliant.
Bargatze and SNL
When
and
I
George
was in
Washington.
third grade,
Oh my God!
and which president was trying to make me learn the metric system? Remember, we were going
Probably
to
Jimmy
change like
Carter.
1975 or 76. We were going to change over
Carter.
to metrics, and it was like
well, that was
Big
Carter was
mistake.
president.
And I was like,
figures
why?
he'd do something
Yeah.
like that.
and it was like the horror as a dyslexic, the horror of my life. But I've always wondered why, and it's basically just because we didn't like the British.
People are texting with a good insurance company. I'll tell you off the air.
Well, now it's too late.
Too late.
Too late for
No, can I
dog
tell you
insurance.
something? My two daughters both have dogs. We've had every pet insurance you can have.
Yeah.
Pays
Doesn't
for
matter.
nothing.
Doesn't
Really?
matter.
It pays for the
Well, somebody
cheapest
just said they
service.
had a $25,000 bill at Angel, and their insurance covered $20,000 of it.
Okay, well, I'm not
Well,
going there.
you know what I would
Should I
call
tell you
that?
a name?
I would call that a lie. That's what. No, I mean, don't say it because you don't know if they work
I don't
for
know.
the company or
I don't know.
whatever.
They might work for the company.
So
That's
before you
right.
go, since we're waiting for the mayor,
Jim is
I didn't think we'd
suspicious.
get to this. We asked Andrea Campbell about the new regulations, about ethics regulations
Oh,
for the
yeah.
Supreme Court, and she said she hadn't read them carefully. She
Big
was
joke.
concerned there are no enforcement
geez.
thing. It's a big joke.
It's
right?
a joke.
It's a
Listen,
total joke.
they already are supposed to be self-policing themselves. So now we have said to them, or they say to themselves, all right, so Marjorie, we asked you to self-police yourself, but you went out and got all these gifts from these wealthy people. So now, if you're going to accept the gift from a wealthy person, at least tell us. And if you think you do something wrong, please punish yourself. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. I have to say, it drives me crazy because I have to, every single year, because I work for NBC, go through a complete vetting of like who, you know, what charities I'm
we do the
involved
same
in.
thing here.
You know,
We do
what
the same thing here,
what
of
other
course.
income I
Yeah.
have, who
We
I
do?
might.
Yeah, we do.
You do.
Oops.
We fill it out for you, Marjorie. You know, who I might be having dinner with. If I have dinner with an elected official who happens to be a friend, I have
You
to
do?
split the bill. I mean, these are, and who cares about me? I mean, really.
It's the
I'm
hated
like on
media,
the
though.
lowest
The hated
level.
media, has to do this.
And
Well,
so,
obviously, one member of the hated media didn't do it, so I guess it wasn't that burdensome,
Maybe I
was it?
forgot.
And meanwhile, you know, Clarence Thomas is getting, you know,
RVs.
RVs, and he gets to go on these trips.
They'll have to get a smaller RV.
It's
going
ridiculous. The guy who picked up the metric system, he should be in charge. George Washington, bring him back and have him put in charge of the Supreme
You
Court.
should
to
be
make
on the
these
Supreme Court,
things.
Travis Kelce. I mean, if you want a change in tenor of this court,
Yeah,
he's the only
we don't know
man,
about
I
his
think, for the
politics,
job.
though, do we? We don't know.
Well,
Well,
I
she's
imagine
pretty
if she's
liberal
pretty
leaning.
Pretty
liberal.
liberal.
Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
maybe they don't discuss
I mean,
politics.
she has been with
Maybe they
people who have been
other
problematic, and then they kind of
interests.
break up right after their problematic statements and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, like
So,
what?
yeah.
Like, tell us one of
I
those.
can't remember his name,
Okay,
but one of the
fine.
lead singers of the British band made a.
Oh, yeah, people didn't like him.
Yeah, he was.
What was his name?
he's
Eel or something?
Yeah, he's performative in his.
Maddie Healy.
Maddie Healy.
Thank you very
that
much.
was Aiden.
We
Thank
had
you.
to
Or
keep a
Nicole
list of
or
the
somebody.
Yeah,
Thank
he was
you for that.
performative
Taylor
in
boyfriends.
his ways to try and rile people up, and of course, he was gone not long after the Swifties said.
Well, I remember
we
her.
don't want him.
Yeah, the fans were very upset.
Yes. You
Now,
know how
bad
many
news
times I've
for you.
seen, why is the mayor here? You don't
Mayor
want me to go
here.
on about Taylor
Goodbye.
Swift for another 5 hours? I'm sure Mayor Wu would cede her time to me to
Are
talk
you a
about
Taylor Swift fan? Are you a Taylor Swift fan? So
Yeah,
sad,
she's
sad.
busy.
She is.
She's
That's
got
the end
things
of her
We
to
don't
do.
want
mayoral
this.
thing,
I was
let me
going to
tell
say
ya.
she is a full-blooded Taylor Swift fan. I'm going to stand up for the mayor on this.
Sue, it is wonderful to
Thank
see you,
you.
and we wish Maud all
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you.
We
I'll
love
give you
Maud
the
the dog.
update.
Thank you very
Send
much.
money. Send money.
You're allowed to have dogs. You can't have a dog in the library.
No,
can
you can't unless it's a special dog.
How great would it be if you brought Maud to the damn
It would be
library?
great.
It'd be great.
Okay,
Sue
we've been-
O'Connell, we love you. Good to see you. Be well.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Sue O'Connell. She is our media maven. She is, of course, as well, the co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News and co-host of At Issue, which you can see every Sunday on NBC 10 after Meet the Press. Thank you very much, Sue. And now we're going to be joined by the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu. She's here for her monthly Ask the Mayor segment, taking our questions and yours. The number to call or text, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, streaming from at the Boston Public Library, and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. It's now time for November's edition of Ask the Mayor with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. She has to speak quickly because she has to light 4,000 Christmas trees in the next month. If you've got a question for the mayor.
And menorahs,
I'm
trellises,
sorry. Oh, I'm
and
so sorry.
a
You're right.
variety of, yes.
In any case, you can call or text her with a question at 877-301-8970. If you're here at the Boston Public Library, Ethan is right there. Raise your hand, Ethan, so they know you are. Ethan, our colleague, he's happy to take a question, and if it's borderline reasonable, we will let you ask it of the mayor. Mayor Wu, it's wonderful to see you. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
Always fun.
Yeah,
Great big crowd today too.
Yeah, thank you very much. They came to see you. They never
Well,
come to
sure
see
as hell
us.
didn't come to
actually.
see
They came
us, that's
No,
for
they
sure.
came to see you, Mayor Wu. But we'll take them, whatever reason they came. So, very good election in the city of Boston for you. The people that you supported in the city council went undefeated. You got Henry Santana, Sharon Durkin, Enrique Jose Papin. Am I forgetting someone? There's a fourth
One more,
person,
yep.
I think. Yeah, Ben Weber. All these people were on your slate of preferred candidates. They all won. So, does that make your life easier, or what does that mean for the city of Boston? Less of a hassle for you with the city council, or what?
You know, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the city council over the last term, and as someone who has come from that very important body, you know, I know how fundamental the city council is as the most direct form of representation. There is nothing like being able to pick up your phone, have your city councilor in your phone, see them at community meetings, and elevate your issue and have that extra advocacy. So I think, you know, we were working to move things that we needed to move through the city council, and we've had great success moving that collaboratively and getting, you know, whether it's on mass and CAS or earlier in the year, issues around housing affordability and changing our requirements for more affordability and other budget items that we've moved through. But I do think that there's a lot of room for growth in terms of new councilors bringing new ideas and a sense that the city wants a more collaborative approach across all different viewpoints. So I'm excited. It's always a fun turning of the page when you start a new term and everyone gets to sort of reset and put their issues on the table, and we're going to have a great group.
So speaking of the city council, what was the vote on your rent control local option bill? Was it
11-2.
11-2. Obviously, it's a different city council, but since the 4 elected were progressives, I assume the vote would be the same. So we've discussed with you probably every month.
Well, actually, okay.
Is that? Oh, well, tell me.
There are some folks who are stepping down as well.
Oh, that's
so
a good
for
point, yeah.
example, there were changes in multiple
So we don't know,
directions.
but the bottom line is it is sitting at the State House. That's, I guess, the good news if you believe in what you call rent stabilization or rent control. The bad news is Representative Connolly, who was with us a few weeks ago, decided to drop his ballot question, and you told us you weren't sure what level or if you'd support it, even though you supported the concept. When, I guess 2 weeks ago, roughly, when the governor came out with this massive housing bond bill, it did include a variation on something you care about, this real estate transfer tax
That's
on
right.
more expensive properties. It also had this provision about accessory dwelling units as of right, so that local cities and towns couldn't screw with an effort to expand up to 900 square feet. But rent control is not there. Is this the death knell of rent control for this cycle, at least?
It won't be on the ballot in terms of a sort of voter-driven ballot initiative, but the reality is that you have to be really strategic about. It's unfortunately, you know, our democracy is very complicated in some great ways, and then in some other ways, you know, resources and financing and being able to do that really matters, and it's doing that in a presidential year is a different landscape than doing that in a non-presidential year, doing that with this group of advocates on board versus that way. It all factors in. I had signed the petition myself, you know, so I was one of those 10,000, and I still continue to support the concept. Have just sent in my strong letter of support for the home rule petition that is specific to Boston that is currently being debated in the hearing up at the State House. And you know, it's, again, one piece of our larger housing strategy. We all know that housing is dire, and this would allow us to help protect people in the short term while we're trying to close the gap between the housing supply that's needed and what we have, and also do so in a way that allows us to keep building that housing stock.
Were you
with all the other
disappointed that it wasn't included in the governor's bill? I mean, she did include, as I say, a local option real estate transfer tax, which I know, at least in concept, I don't know about the details, you support. Were you troubled that she didn't include the rent control local option in there?
I'm a half glass full kind of person usually, so I was thrilled to see transfer fee in there. That's a big deal that we're now having a statewide conversation about that, and not just within the city of Boston and the other municipalities that had moved that forward. And then when it comes to rent stabilization, you know, that there was always I think there's a little further we need to go in terms of really ensuring that everyone understands what we're talking about. I still continue to hear concerns that are really related to the former version of what rent control looked like back in the day, several decades ago in Boston, which is in fact not what we have proposed and put forward.
And by the way, I know I've said this 1,000 times, so my apologies. Since you referenced that, when rent control was repealed on a ballot question in 1994, the 3 communities that had rent control
That's right.
overwhelmingly voted to keep it, and the 348 communities that didn't have it voted to repeal it, even though it had no effect on them. We're talking to the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu. The number's 877-301-8970.
And by the way, the Globe just did a big takeout on the cost of housing in Brookline, and you can see it's not just because they get rid of rent control, but that had something to do with it, because the affordable apartments that were all along Beacon Street, they all disappeared, went condo.
You can't afford to live on my street in Cambridge anymore either. It was very different when I moved in.
Anyway, the number is 877-301-8970. As we were talking about, we have the mayor with us for the next hour. Let's go to Chris in Framingham. Thank you for calling, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Chris.
Mayor Wu, can you hear me all right?
We can
Yes,
now.
good morning.
Okay. So I have a question regarding rent control and why wouldn't the focus be more on increasing the current voucher systems, you know, the state voucher and those type of programs? Because we're already set up for those programs, and I think it could impact low-income renters a lot quicker without shifting the burden of the higher expense on everything, including rent, onto a small number of private landlords. Why don't we just spread it out through the general public, since the general public seems to want this, and not make it an us versus them scenario, and not deter future investment in rental apartments, which certainly will happen if you restrict or suppress rents below market while all the expenses stay at market, that we can just increase funding for the voucher system. And in Boston, you have the right to create your own voucher system to help low-income residents, I believe. So why not take the easier, fairer path, in my opinion?
Well, thank you for the question. First off, I would say it's truly not either or on anything related to housing. We need every possible thing we can do, and we, in fact, at the local level, have been expanding our municipal vouchers alongside advocating for more funding for state vouchers. And in fact, we've even made some changes where our affordability requirement for new housing now includes 17% affordable on-site plus 3% where vouchers would be attached to that. And as you say, this is a way for the property owner to be subsidized, so they, experience it as the same as a market rate apartment, but it actually expands the geography for where our voucher holders are able to go in Boston, and helps to boost diversity within each one of our neighborhoods and in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds as well. I will just, again, challenge you, because I heard you say that this, why should we be restricting housing, new housing production by keeping rents below market. And again, this is not what our proposed rent stabilization model does. This is really what some cities around the country have already done, which is to ensure that you're preventing the most egregious rent increases, but not setting rent levels. This means that you in our case, would not be able to increase rents by double digits. Every landlord I talk to, every property owner, every financer of real estate says to me, no way are we baking in double-digit rent increases into our model. That would be unsustainable. And so, yet it still happens when people are trying to clear out a building, or when you hear so many of the specific incidents and anecdotes. It is when people are faced with one of these egregious, unnecessarily large rent increases that they can't absorb and plan for.
By the way, thank you, Chris, for your call. 877-301-8970 if you want to talk to the mayor. Are you not announcing something about multifamily housing tomorrow, from what I understand?
Yes, we are.
What is that?
So the idea is that Boston, if you look at our zoning code, we have very, very old rules. I won't get into that whole soapbox on how we need to update them. But most of our neighborhoods have housing that actually is out of compliance with the existing zoning code. In so many of the places across the city where our characteristic, call it 3-decker or triple-decker, that in fact is in violation of what is permitted by right on those streets. And so as we imagine how we look at the existing footprint of where houses already are or where there might be vacant parcels, we want to think about what is the next form of housing that really is going to help us boost the supply, create more affordable homes, and think creatively about how we use those rules and update them in a way where it can be predictable and understood very easily and not a sort of home by home by home negotiation just to add to the housing supply that's needed.
David in Boston, he's calling, I think, about housing as well. Hi, David.
Hello, David.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. Hi, Mayor Wu.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, here? Are you here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just hearing things in the background. Anyway, I'm calling about the process. I live in Mattapan on a dead-end street with only 7 houses on the street. There's an area that is at the end of the street that is a wooded type area, and now they're trying to build, or they're going to build, a 48-unit affordable housing that is going to completely destroy the street, and all the abutters around it had issues. I'm talking about, we're not against affordable housing, but with an egress on a dead-end street, this is just, it's crazy. But what I'm really talking about is the process. The process that we went through with the developers. We had multiple meetings over and over again trying to work with them. And then we go to the ISD for an appeals process, and we're told that everything was all set, everything was all in motion. We have people from your office who are speaking under the cuff and saying, I know, this is wrong, but this is how it's going. In that meeting, there was racially insensitive comments. There was all kinds of things that were egregious. And I just think that if we're just going to ram down these huge buildings on individual streets, none of the neighbors have any input. I just think it's just modern day neo-colonization, what needs to be stopped.
Okay, let's hear what the mayor has to say. David, thanks for the call.
David, I'm so sorry that it sounds like a very frustrating experience and one that we're trying to change across the board, because what you're talking about is exactly what I know neighborhoods all across the city have gone through, which is you feel like there's a process set up for community engagement, but in fact, this mismatch between what the rules say and what actually happens in practice ends up making it so that you question whether there's a point to being involved at all. We need to update the rules so that they're real, they're modern, we stick to them, and everyone, developers and community members, have a good sense of what is likely to happen. I'm going to look into this situation. If you're able to stay on, I would love to just make sure we get the address and street from you, just so I can check into it, particularly around what you're saying, if there was some inappropriate behavior that happened at the meetings, and to check into that. I will just say what we're trying to do with the zoning code is to avoid these situations where, in the past we've said we need more housing, but then kept silent on where it should go. And then you get these battles one by one where those neighborhoods that might be more well-resourced or organized, or someone knows someone who knows someone, they end up being able to sort of fight back against a project, whereas in other places it doesn't happen, and then it counts to the housing goals. It needs to be equitable across the board, and we need to have that consistency in terms of how we do this in different parts of the city, and the only way we get to that is by making sure the rules are real. So I'd love to follow up.
David, can you stay on hold? And one of our producers will get the information the mayor is looking for, address, etc. So do not go away. Someone will pick up your call in a second. Thank you for the call.
We have a text from Maria from Jamaica Plain, who wants to know about the resignation of most of the Committee on English Language Learners. They were critical of the Wu administration walking away from the research-based data. She says it's research-based. I'm not sure, but that informs that English is second language. Kids need to receive education in their native language as well as instruction to learn English.
So I am incredibly grateful to the committee members who had served. Some of these leaders had been part of this city's this particular task force for over a decade, and what was, I think, maybe envisioned as a shorter term appointment has ended up being a lot of their time over many, many years, and we're very grateful for it. I think there's as I understand it, a little bit of a divergence between what our superintendent and chief of academics in the district would say is backed by research in terms of national best practices around how to support multilingual learners, and what is perceived as the maybe only or best way to do multilingual education. Our district fully supports expanding multilingual education. We know that it's not only a need in the district, but such a value add for our young people in today's global economy. And how we go about doing that in the best way, I think, is a little bit of what's at issue here. As I understand it, some of the task force members have been advocating for a return to our previous approach prior to state law had even changed from a while ago, where there was much greater separation and multilingual learners would receive instruction only in their home language or language they were most comfortable in for all subjects separate from other students. Our goal now is to reach truly inclusive education, which means providing supports where students need them individually, but wherever possible, not walling off whole populations of students from the entire rest of their school communities. And so that means, of course, providing adequate and intensive English language and native language instruction where necessary, but finding opportunities to help support students as they are progressing in their English fluency to be able to experience education alongside their English-speaking peers, English-fluent peers as well. And so that's, there's a lot of detail and nuance in that, but I think that's the best way at a high level to describe the kind of difference in opinion there. And the superintendent and her team feel very strongly that this is the direction that nationally education experts have put their weight behind, and I stand behind the superintendent in her judgment.
Just as a quick aside, I know in Brookline, which is a town many people in Boston leave from Boston, and they go to Brookline because they think the schools are better there. The schools are very good in Brookline. A massive influx of Russian kids a few years back, and they did this thing that you are talking about, which is have the kids learn Russian, be taught in Russian for part of the day, and then go back in with the English-speaking kids, so they wouldn't be segregated from the English-speaking kids. They would learn English faster. And I thought the research, because this was debated in Brookline, was just the opposite, that the faster you can integrate children, the better, as opposed to not having them, because if you can't understand English in school, when the school is predominantly English, it's difficult for you at recess, it's difficult for you in the cafeteria, it's difficult for you in the bus. So it seems that the faster, and kids are very supple at that age too. So I was surprised this was even a huge controversy.
Yeah, and again, that's my understanding of where the national research is, as well as what the state requirements are for education, is trying to ensure it's as inclusive as possible. I will say, I just want to emphasize though, that we are not trying to return to the old days
Correct.
Of saying, actually English is the only, appropriate or proper form of communication, and erasing people's identities. We're building multicultural, multilingual communities, and our goal is just to ensure that everyone is included in as many environments of that as possible.
Mayor Wu, the other day you decided to pull out of the possibility of being involved in this pilot program to ban fossil fuels in buildings. Roughly 70% of Boston's greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. I know you were pretty excited about this. There were 9 of the 10 slots the legislature approved that basically said that there couldn't be fossil fuels in new buildings that were constructed. Why did you decide? A lot of people disappointed in your decision. Why did you decide to pull out?
Yeah, I'm glad to get a little time on this because there's a lot to unpack here. And I just want to say first on the top, this was in no way related to any kind of lobbying by any group or interest or community. I mean, if anything at all, we heard very, very strong support for the city of Boston to undertake this and to move in this direction. It's very challenging to think that we are not going to be eligible for this program, but we are going to go about it a different way. Basically, this law was written before I came into office, around 10 communities that had already taken certain steps in this direction, and it really was modeled and built off of the understanding that Boston would not be part of it. And then under the new state administration, after it had passed, there were different rules and regulations that were put out to provide specifics of how to apply on a pretty quick timeline, given the fact that these communities were already, 90% set, and there was one slot available. We, at the end, were weighing whether we should try to jam ourselves into a program where we had received some indications that Boston likely would not be picked, or there was a smaller chance that we would be picked for that last slot, just given how the program was rolling out. And yet, as part of the requirements to apply for the program, we needed to put forward a fully fleshed out ordinance and legislation around how exactly we would ramp into fossil fuel-free regulations, by what timelines, and how we would differ from the model code that the state had released in June. Now, in Boston, we are very different scale in terms of the other cities that are part of this program already, different diversity of uses and building types, and to engage our communities appropriately on putting forward the exact ordinance on how we would enter this program, we simply could not do that in a thoughtful way in time for the deadlines that they had. And so we had to make a choice of, do we rush the engagement with community to do this by the deadline for a program that there was little chance that we were actually going to get selected for, or to find a way to try to expand the program, advocate, but basically give up that last slot to do it a different way for Boston and reach it through a more meaningful and sustained community effort. I know this is very long already, but
take your time.
Just so people understand what we're actually talking about, what is the program and how far are we from being fossil fuel free in Boston? As you said, buildings are the majority of our emissions, and the 5% of the 5% of the largest buildings make up 40% of our total emissions. Not 40% of the buildings, 40% of all emissions comes from 5% of our buildings. We already have regulations on the books with authority from the state to regulate those buildings' energy efficiency and emissions through Article 80 of our zoning code, Article 37, which is a climate resiliency code, and the Boston Emissions Reductions and Disclosure Ordinance called BERDO. And so those buildings are being phased into full fossil fuel-free compliance on a timeline already. What we intend to do is to accelerate that with zoning code changes and other things that we can do at the city level to close the rest of the gap on those largest buildings to 5%. For the rest of the 30% of emissions that the smaller buildings make up, 20,000 square feet or smaller, we have opted into the state's specialized energy stretch code earlier this year, which the state made available to municipalities. And that program makes it so that all new construction of, again, all buildings, but in this case for us, the smaller buildings especially, must either be all electric, or they basically are heavily disincentivized from having fossil fuel hookups. But there is a path where you can still have fossil fuel hookups if you install solar panels and pre-wire the entire building for future electric hookups. That's the only way to still use fossil fuels under that. So what the 10 Communities program that we didn't apply to would have allowed us to do is, again, not for the big buildings because we can do that on our own, but for those smaller buildings where it's already not captured by the specialized energy stretch code, that last portion of people wanting to use the pathway that requires solar panels and pre-wiring for electric to close off that possibility and just require electric. That's the last gap that remains from what we can do on our own and what we could have done with the state program that, again, we were told we probably wouldn't get into. And so we're going to try to grab that last gap as well through a home rule petition on our own, on the right timeline to fully engage our workforce throughout the city, stakeholders, and to do so in a way that hopefully paves the way for more than just 10 communities to be able to do this all together.
A couple of questions about this, if I may. You said at the beginning of your answer, Mayor Wu, that no group no industry group had influence. There is something called the NAIOP, Massachusetts Commercial Real Estate Development Trade Group, quoted in the Globe. Their spokesperson said, "We are pleased the mayor recognizes the challenges associated with a fossil fuel ban at this time, et cetera, et cetera." How do you react to what she had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I so appreciate their perspective, especially in a very difficult time for the economy, that as with interest rates as high as they are and with the city pushing for more housing and trying to make it work financially, I recognize that in the very, very short term, this can be perceived as increasing the costs to use, new technology versus just the old standard ways of doing things. Over the long run, we all know that this ends up saving all of us money, both in terms of the damage that's avoided from extreme weather, having, flooding consequences or et cetera, or even the utilities cost and the energy efficiency gains that are realized over the medium term for the property owners as well. Truly, the decision was not about whether we want to move forward and be a fossil fuel-free city or not. We are doing it one way or the other. We are also committed to doing it in a way that brings along our entire workforce, including those who will need to transition away from fossil fuel industries. And so for us, it was just that we couldn't meet the window where the application was due with the appropriate community outreach, and rather than choose one or the other to rush this through but not do that part right, we are going to do what we can on our own and then try to close that last gap with a home rule petition that we will do the appropriate outreach
One
for.
last thing, unlike you who knows everything about this, everything I learned last night reading emails from people who actually almost all said they were fans of yours and admired your leadership in the environment, didn't like this decision. They disagreed with your assessment that Boston would have lost this effort. And the things they cited was the level of diversity in this community that separated it from the 9 wealthier communities that have gotten it already. The fact that all 9 of those communities have a median income that is higher than the state median income as opposed to Boston, which is
Were any of them the
lower.
state that was actually going to be making the choice?
No, but so did you get a representation from the state?
We were in constant conversations with the state.
And they basically said it
and
wasn't going to happen.
While we were never told outright that there was 0 chance we were going to get it, this was not a program that was designed for the city of Boston to get into, and for us to do it in a way that, it was essentially going to come down to playing a game of chicken with the state at the end. There are challenges for Boston getting into this on such a short timeline without that engagement. Both a very real acknowledgement of needing to be aware of and working towards our electric grid capacity and how we partner on ensuring there's the right substations in the right places and the infrastructure investments that need to be made, as well as the transition for workers. We understood it to be very difficult for Boston to be selected.
Okay, let's go to Dan in Dorchester. You're on with the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Mayor. I have a quick question. I live in Dorchester, and at one point with all the one-way streets, we were going to get speed bumps to help calm down people driving through our streets. But I just heard from a friend that even though there was a study done pre-COVID, now that you guys are holding back on the program and are going to do another study. And I was just wondering why there needs to be another study if we already knew. And I mean, in all honesty, the street that I live on, people are ridiculous. They're always going so fast down that street to the point where we've had a car flip on our street, and my personal car one time got destroyed because someone was speeding down the street.
Dan, this is a horrible connection. Do you understand what
Yep.
Dan, we're going to cut you off only. I think the mayor understands why you're calling, and
again,
it's bad connection.
I'd love
Thank
to
you.
make sure that you have the right information about your particular street, because I know there are parts of Dorchester that are slated for speed bumps, and so
You want him to hold on?
I would love if we can get your street. That would be very helpful.
Stick around, Dan. Producer will get the info.
And I'll
Sorry.
say, so if the information that you're getting is right from your friend, I want to explain a little bit of where our program is. We want to do more speed humps throughout the city. We know it's necessary for safety, especially on many of our residential side streets that are becoming cut-throughs with different navigation apps and all that. What we're trying to do differently is, 1, do more faster each year, but 2, do them in zones and not individual streets at a time. Because what we see happen when you do one street at a time is the cars just end up going to your neighbor's street, the next one over, and then we're pushing the problem that direction. So if it's true that there might need to be some restudy, I imagine that what it is ensuring that we're doing the whole zone and studying the streets around it so that we can do this properly for the whole area and not just kind of push the problem one over for your neighbors to then start mobilizing to get speed humps, but to do it in a way that's comprehensive and will actually have impact.
Dan, don't go away. We're going to get your street information and take it from there.
We have a question from the homie mic there about the schools. A school question there, I believe, from
Hi.
Avril.
I'm a Boston resident of the Leather District.
What's your name?
Averill.
Hi, Averill.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. So my question is, will there be a change to the new inequitable exam school policy, especially since there have been so many high-achieving students denied seats, and they have become unintended consequences?
So thank you, first of all, for coming here and for your question. The superintendent gave a little bit of an update on this to the school committee just recently. We now have 1 year of data from the full policy being implemented that was envisioned and set now several years ago, I think somewhere around 2020 or so. And so there's only been 1 year of evaluation, and I think for anything that we want to just have a firm handle on, we need to have more data, as the superintendent has been saying. I think one issue that has come up the most that I've heard about is this issue of the 10 points that go to schools where more than 40% of the student population is considered at or below, or receiving supports for being at or below the poverty line. And the practical consequences have been that all but something like 7 schools within the city of Boston, feeder schools, have these extra points. And so for students at those 7 that are above the 40% threshold, or sorry, below the 40% threshold, and therefore not getting the points, there have been instances where even if they have, I think there was one student with a perfect score on the tests and great, all A's, and did not receive their first choice exam school. And so it's again, this issue is one where we, as a city, I know across the board, want to ensure that all of the seats at all of our high schools are high quality, and that the processes to decide the exam schools in particular make sense for representation across our school communities, across our neighborhoods, across different backgrounds in the city. And I know this is an issue that the superintendent wants to continue working on and ensuring that we have the right data analysis to back this up. But it's, no matter what changes we make to this, the real solution is that we need every single high school seat to be one where people feel proud to attend and that they understand are well-resourced. I have a huge focus on ensuring that we're doing this across every high school. And some of the changes we've proposed so far, including the ability to expand Madison Park Vocational Technical High School significantly, the ability to expand the O'Brien Exam School significantly, adding early college across all of our high schools, starting with Charlestown High School with the first direct partnership, so every single student will have access to early college in as many courses free of charge as they would like to take. Key signature partnerships that we're continuing to work on, where different colleges like UMass or Boston College are leaning in and helping us to adopt specific high schools, so we're creating quality options everywhere. And then career pathways that partners in different sectors, like healthcare, for example, are really leaning in with the city. So we're moving as fast as we can on all fronts. And I definitely hear and know this issue as one that is firmly on the list for us to think about and take action on in the context of all the high schools.
April, thanks for the question. We appreciate it.
We're talking to Michelle Wu, the mayor of the city of Boston. She's going to be with us for another about a half hour. Our number is 877-301-8970. If you want to call us or text us, we are broadcasting live at Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. If you're just joining us, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is here till a little bit after the bottom of the hour for the monthly Ask the Mayor. You can talk to her by texting her or calling her at 877-301-8970.
You know, Mayor Wu, we're just talking about high schools and getting into exam schools in Boston, and I know we've talked a lot about some of the schools in Boston not being in great repair. We talked with Paul Revel, who used to be the Secretary of Education, a couple of weeks ago about what they've done in Baltimore, which is that they did something extremely controversial, which is they closed a lot of schools that had been under attended and were kind of in really bad shape. To spend a lot of money on revamping a lot of the schools. I know in Boston, people get very upset when you close the school, and I get it, because your kid has been there, and you like the school, and maybe it's a neighborhood school, and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of under-attended schools in Boston that are in pretty bad shape that you still have to heat and light and service and all that kind of stuff. I mean, would Baltimore have any appeal to you, what they did?
So the lessons that I drew from Baltimore, as I understand it, was that they created a fund through the state legislature specifically for that center city. We have the MSBA here, the Mass School Building Authority, which helps pay for and reimburse local school districts for new buildings. But because their budget line item is so small and there are so many districts all across the state that need new buildings, it's very rare that any district can get more than one school in at a time, and that it's a multi-year process to even get through to be awarded with them, and they've been able to help fewer and fewer because their resources are constrained. And so I would love to have a Boston-specific state fund to help us with that. We definitely need the resources. I will say on the closure question, I don't think it's, everything that we do in city government, of course, is about trade-offs and the financial resources that we have versus what we are trying to do. But it's not, it's a convenient narrative to say that, we have all these schools that just need to be closed down because they're, empty and not doing well. If you actually go and visit all of our school communities, there are incredible educators. There are children who are just so inspiring, and it's really not a matter, it's incredibly traumatic to close any school community. We should never be doing that because we feel right now in this moment that we can't pay for a school. The reason why we should make any changes to facilities, whether it's mergers or new builds or changes in where community should be located or where it sits on its own, is about the student experience there. We do have some, for example, very, very old buildings that are simply not in the condition that they should be. The bathrooms need to be updated. They don't have, even if everything is safe and fine from a sort of basic health and life safety perspective, they don't have science labs that are up to date for our young people. They don't have performing arts spaces. They don't have group rooms that for different types of group work that happens in school these days. And so, and then others of our buildings are very, very small. And in fact, there's only one class per grade, which means when you only have one class, you can't do larger activities like having multiple AP classes to choose from, or sports programs that have enough students to sustain a team. And so we have been working for over a year now to put together a facilities condition assessment on the real-time status of every component of our schools, the boiler, whether there's a gym, how functional is it, do they have an auditorium, do they have space for a music room, this and that and the other. That is going to be now maintained in real time, because before the district had done one or two snapshots in the past, but they very quickly became outdated as components aged. And so this is now a real-time what we call FCA facilities condition assessment that will be updated, so we always know where the most dire needs are. We also now have a rubric that we've been working on that can help share where buildings do not meet the high quality student experience expectations that we have for a school, whether they don't have the appropriate spaces or their sort of scale doesn't support the diversity and breadth of offerings academically or extracurricularly that we would like to see. And it doesn't mean that Now, we're a district that has been built up over 400 years, so there's always going to be exceptions and some smaller schools that will exist and some larger schools that will exist. But we wanted to have some consistency to the planning of it and ensure that as we build out, what does a large high school look like? What does a medium or smaller size high school look like? And what is just the cutoff where we don't think that that is actually sustainable for an adequate experience for our young people? And then we start moving around the pieces to understand how we equitably go about fixing that.
Let's go to Brighton, where we ordinarily are, at least 3 days a week. Andrew is next on Boston Public Radio with the mayor of the city of Boston. Hey there, Andrew. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for taking the call, and
Good.
Thanks for doing this, Mayor Wu.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I'm interested if it's ever crossed your mind, crossed the city's mind, or if there's any planning or discussion about either merging or annexing some of the local communities like Cambridge, Somerville, Everett, Brookline, or something like that.
Wait a minute. Why would we do that, Andrew?
I love the idea,
You
but
do?
annexing,
Okay.
that's a great question. How about it, Mayor Wu?
I will admit, I will confess, I was just sharing half in jest at a dinner a couple last week that, if you think about the challenges when it comes to resources for our school system and housing opportunities in most other cities, major cities, the footprint that Boston would occupy would actually include much of the kind of greater Boston area. They all have that within one municipality, and it just means there's more opportunity for the diversity of all different needs and resources to be at the table together. And in fact, as we think about where our school system is headed into the 50th anniversary of busing in Boston, forced desegregation because the Boston School Committee refused to engage in ensuring there would be integrated school systems. Part of the kind of suburbanization of, and walling off of resources, community by community, has played out across our education system nationally. Anyway, if I ever get to like a 10th term in office, maybe we can pick up the annexation effort again.
Andrew, thank you. Why don't you follow one of those local option things with the legislature and see what they think. Mayor Wu, we have discussed almost every month for months the complaint against a captain on the Boston Police Force, John, and he's nicknamed Pepperjack Deneli. You said we knew based on reporting, Internal Affairs was looking at it. It was on Commissioner Cox's desk, and ultimately he'd make a report and make a decision. He told us several weeks ago that he had made a decision. It would be released imminently. It was released a little later. I have great respect for Commissioner Cox. However, he did, I think, unintentionally misrepresent something. He said the original reporting that the Globe did, in which it said that Internal Affairs had found Captain Deneli to have used excessive force and lied, wasn't true. In fact, it was true. From what I understand, is the commissioner decided, for reasons that I hope you can share with us, to send it back to Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs reversed itself, dropped the excessive force thing, and there were a couple of minor charges. You were quoted in a Globe story as saying it's fairly routine, from what you understand, for these things to be set back. Tom Nolan, a criminologist and former Boston cops, said it's not routinely done. We had Howard Friedman on the show the other day, who I'm sure you know or know of, who obviously is a noted civil rights lawyer who gets involved in a lot of these police misconduct cases, including some, not this one, with Captain Deneli. He said it's not routinely done. I guess there's several questions. One, do you know why the commissioner did send it back? And two, this is the 9th excessive force charge from what the Globe reports against Captain Deneli, every single one of which has been found not to be substantiated. Are you concerned about the outcome here?
So I just want to try to provide some clarity here, because I have been very thoroughly immersed in this and just wanting to ensure that I could understand the process and this specific situation, and also the commissioner's comments about it. So I think it's, Boston Police is it's a very structured organization, and specific words have specific meaning. And so the word finding has a very specific legal meaning within the department's internal processes, and that a finding is reached when a commissioner signs off on the recommendations that come up from below. And so when he says that there was no finding reached on that, he did not mean that the investigators had not offered a recommendation one way, but he meant that there was no finding, because that word is used when it becomes final. And so when, I don't know exactly what the article said, and what was, misreporting or not misreporting or all of that, but it was not, usually, and this was a situation that particularly happened here, usually the partial results are in fact not released to the media because until an investigation is final, precisely because there are different procedural steps that need to be taken that can and sometimes do involve multiple rounds of going down, making sure that this kind of analysis was included in the due diligence, and then making sure to follow that line of questioning all the way through, and then reaching, signing off when the commissioner feels comfortable. Here in this case, Commissioner Cox started a year and about 3 months ago at this point. We inherited some outstanding open internal affairs cases that some of them had been lingering for years prior to him even starting on the job. And then, of course, he needed to put his infrastructure in place and get, ramped up and all of that. And so now he has been working very diligently to clear that backlog, because we should never have a multi-year situation drag on. With this particular situation, I think, again, there's some conflation also. First of all, some of the incidents that you're mentioning here in the total number, and I think sometimes are discussed in the media all in the same breath, those were separate complaints that were actually resolved before I or the commissioner were in our roles. And so we do not open back up past adjudications or anything like that.
But it is true there have been 9 excessive force charges filed against him.
I don't know the number, but I will take your word for it. I know there have been multiple. And in this case, what he inherited as an open case was very specific in terms of the incident and the complaints that were before him. And he reached a conclusion based on, I stand by Commissioner Cox's leadership, because he just knows the department inside out and has a very thoughtful, comprehensive vision for where the department is headed. And in this case in particular, he oversaw internal affairs himself for multiple years, and so he knows that part even more inside out. When he says that certain types of analysis should have been completed and wanted to make sure that they were done and sent that back, they need to, that is part of doing the due diligence.
Doesn't that make you nervous about internal affairs then? I mean, if he made the right decision. Again, he inherited
this and has now put in his own people into all different roles. And looking back, this is, a transition period that I think he and I are working to wrap up. But there were some ways where he set the new direction for how these things should go. And some of the things that we have to look backwards and take care of, he has taken care of. And with Captain Deneli, there are multiple career pathways, even in terms of being a police officer. Some officers tend to be in more administrative roles or have very little interaction with the public if they're doing, investigatory work of a certain type, or they're brought in certain situations. And then others have a career trajectory where they are more frequently in front of the members of the public in very high pressure, volatile situations. And so I know he's been on the front lines of many situations like that. And each one of those has been adjudicated in the past, some before Commissioner Cox got here, some now after. And I stand by the commissioner and the department in their leadership, and know that we are headed in the right direction for BPD.
Can you share with us specifically why he did send it back to Internal Affairs? Or?
These are all internal processes that are sensitive, and I don't want to get into every little detail of it, but there were, when a use of force complaint is alleged, there are certain types of analysis that need to be walked through all the way, and he wanted to make sure that they were done fully.
And you're comfortable that Captain Deneli is on the streets?
Yes.
Okay.
We should say, by the way, that Commissioner Cox was going to come on.
Yes.
He offered to come on today, but we didn't get the offer till yesterday mid-afternoon. It was too late for us to rejigger things, so we will have him on again as soon
He
as
said
it works.
his spokesperson said that he would join us shortly after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's the update. He's going to be here shortly after Thanksgiving. Mayor, we're getting a lot of texts.
Can I just add one point
Sure,
too on that?
sure, of course.
So, what's been on my mind a lot lately in terms of BPD and what it looks like on the ground and having the chance to really observe and see how they do what they do has been the effort around mass and CAS, for example.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
I think there's a little bit of a connection point here in one, again, addressing situations from way back. Anytime you're looking back on a years old conversation or interaction, it's very, very difficult to feel as confident as you would if you were addressing something right away and could sort of talk to people live and have that. And I think we don't, one other point that has changed from before until now is the widespread adoption of body cameras. And, when those weren't in place before across the force, there were, it was like, could you get a camera, a view from this camera that happened to be stationed on the light pole or, some other snippet from far away. Whereas now it's very, it's just very straightforward that everybody knows that these interactions are recorded, they're available, they are, there on the record for everyone. And so, in terms of where we are as a force now, that is one very significant thing that I think does factor in day to day for everyone, including members of the public. And in terms of how the interaction at Mass and CAS went, with Captain Deneli being a very important part of the on-the-ground effort, as many precincts and districts were pulled into that, we saw that the cooperation, the collaboration between BPD, the Boston Public Health Commission, and our outreach workers, our community partners, couldn't have been more seamless. And I was always blown away to see our officers know every single person's name, to be sharing their joy at what progress they might be making in their own recovery journey, and they're very invested in the work that's happening on the ground. One last point I want to make on this is we also recently graduated the largest in a long time police class. Our new recruit class graduated a couple weeks ago now. Most diverse class, nearly double the size of the standard classes back in the day, as we're trying to boost our staffing and ensure that we're fully reflective of and representative of our communities. But there's one member in the class who I got the chance to speak to, who is 47 years old, which is rare, right? There's an age cutoff to even apply to be an officer, and this is well beyond that. But what had happened in this case, he's a leader within the Vietnamese community in Boston, and he had been in the class in 2017. But at the end of it, had, I think, twisted his ankle or had a physical injury where he wasn't able to finish the class and graduate. And so went through a lot of hoops and even legislative actions to be able to get an exception to go back and participate. And so he did it once in 2017 and then just graduated a couple weeks ago. But what he was sharing with me was that he was shocked at how different the experience was 6 years ago versus now under Commissioner Cox, where he said before it was very much about physical tactics to get a weapon away from someone or, sort of disarm a situation, versus their work now of mental health and understanding how to de-escalate a situation appropriately, being out in community, shadowing for an entire week community service officers and being out and asked to just be involved as part of their training, thinking very intentionally about what other services from other departments might need to be looped in. So in many ways, seen and unseen, this department is moving in a new direction that I think is best positioned to serve our residents.
You mentioned Massachusetts Avenue and Melanie Cass Boulevard, the tent city, people called it, that was down there. They're gone now. What is the update on how people that were there, where are they? Do we know?
Yep, there were 102 residents who needed housing and shelter and were connected to individualized placements. This came through weeks, months in some cases, of one-on-one conversations to really understand what medical needs needed to be addressed, what other sort of life situations needed to be taken into account. 70-some of those residents went into a low-threshold housing placement and with wraparound medical services. Another 20-some, I believe, went into a shelter placement that was appropriate, and some were reunified with family members and actually were able to access housing with their support networks elsewhere. By the end, even 3 pups were placed. The last few tents were residents with dogs who really wanted to make sure that they could keep their beloved family member with them. And our team, again, BPD, BPHC, our coordinated response team, housing and community partners, went above and beyond to find the shelters that would allow for dogs, and then there was a requirement that to have a dog there that had to be vaccinated, so then they drove the dog over to get the vaccinations, and there were no arrests made in enforcement of the mask and cast ordinance at all, still to this date, and there's been a sustained effort now where all of the staffing that had been previously required just to sustain and keep the peace and try to manage a situation where hundreds of people were gathering in a pretty dangerous, unsafe conditions. Now that everyone's been connected to housing and shelter, and that large gathering situation no longer exists, our staffing is redirected towards mobile outreach to actually engage one-on-one with people all throughout the city, every neighborhood, to connect folks to housing and services.
You usually bring something that has a city connection. What's in there?
Yes, so this is a bag of bags.
Love
and hats that supports our food composting efforts
Thank you kindly.
in the city.
Oh.
And this is to highlight that we have slots still available. So anyway, there's multiple of everything here. We still have spaces available to join the City of Boston's free curbside composting program. Gets picked up the same time as your trash. You get a little mini cute green bin that gets rolled out to the curb, and then one that sits on your counter where all the food waste and compostable materials go inside. And it diverts out of our trash system, and we hope more people will sign up.
You're going to ask the rat question from Sue?
Well, I was going to say our media maven, Sue O'Connell, who visits us all the time from NBC 10 Boston, she's very interested in composting because she thinks it will help the rat problem if more people do compost. I'm a new composter, and I have to say it makes me feel much less guilty about the food that I waste. And you can't believe how much food you do waste when you put it all in one of these containers. Yep. But she is concerned about the rats in Roxbury. I think she lives in Fort Hill. I'm not sure. And somebody else just texted a little while ago concerned about how you were going to kill the rats when the rats get out of control, and wants to make sure the city doesn't use rat poison because they're worried about the owls and the raccoons and the hawks and everybody else eating the rat poison.
Okay, rats is a big focus and priority here. We have been tracking rat complaints and just trying to understand if any changes in how we pick up trash or how the city has run have had an impact. It really does seem like through the pandemic, when more people were at home and eating more meals at home, and the sort of dispersal of where food sources could be were all throughout our neighborhoods, we did see a corresponding then rise in the reports of needing help with rodent control. The only way, we can set however many traps we want, and I will check on the
rat poison
issue,
yeah,
just to be sure. But the only way to actually get at the root of this is to take away the food sources, and so we need to move towards more containers that are
as opposed to plastic bags,
rat-proof.
Yeah.
Instead of just having trash bags out all over the place and having food in each of those trash bags. So composting does have a bit to do with that. There's a very compact container that holds all that food, and then it's also removed from the rest of the trash, hopefully, in that household.
I know you only have a minute or so left, but you spoke at a prayer service the other day, an event hosted by the Muslim community for people to pray for Palestinians in Gaza. There's a lot of debate in this country about whether the Biden administration is putting enough pressure on Israel to be more proportional, I guess the word of art is, in terms of what it's doing to civilians there, allegedly having killed more than 10,000, more than 4,000 kids, according to the Palestinian Health Authority, in an attempt to ferret out the leaders of Hamas. Are you comfortable with what the Biden administration has been doing?
I am. I'm not an expert in foreign relations, and certainly on incredibly complex generational issues. You know, I stay in my lane at the city level. What I see in terms of the images, the numbers, the babies, the children who have been killed, it's horrific. And, you know, as a world, for me, the adding to how much pain there is in watching the suffering on all sides, right? Everyone should have the right to live freely, right, and not be taken hostage or bombed or you know, people end up being on the table when it comes to larger geopolitical conflicts that are in play. And I wish we were at a place in the world where there could be some coordinated end game for all of this, because I don't know where this is headed, and it's having a tremendous impact on the city of Boston in terms of the direct connections that we have to family members in Israel, in Gaza, in all of the surrounding areas, and we feel it every single day.
The congressperson who represents Boston, Ayanna Pressley's urged the president to urge Israel to declare a ceasefire. Do you share that view?
You know, my job is to focus on how to support our residents here on the ground, and so I don't trust myself enough to be an expert and haven't put in the deep study that's required to feel solid on this. But I see horrible things happening in the world, and I want to make sure that we are creating a city that is safe for everyone here, everyone of different views and perspectives, to feel part of our community. And I know, during the pandemic, for example, when there was much rhetoric around China and their role in the pandemic that was amplified through sort of racist, xenophobic remarks by the former president and others, there was a tremendous backlash on that Asian Americans felt all throughout the country. And here, again, the rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of Islamophobia, the incidents that we've seen around the country of even lives lost from that kind of violence that seems very much connected to the rise of hate at the root of seeing what's happening. We have to hold together as a community, create space for dialogue, create space for people to have different views and to support and advocate for what we believe is the best position in all cases, but to here where it matters so much also recognize our humanity, recognize each other's humanity, and ensure that we are not giving, trading that off to, in these larger currents that are really sweeping everywhere.
Mayor Wu, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Mayor Michelle Wu.
Thank you. With you. Thank you very much, Mayor, for coming in. That was Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, and she joins us once a month for Ask the Mayor. And again, we always appreciate her time and her presence as well. Coming up after a quick break, author Ben Mezrich is here on his new book, Breaking Twitter, Elon Musk and the Most Controversial Corporate Takeover in History. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
I thought the show was over, but it wasn't. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan live at the library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. We're joined now live at the Boston Public Library by Ben Mezrich. His latest is Breaking Twitter, Elon Musk and the most controversial corporate takeover in history. Ben, it's great to see you. Congratulations.
Good seeing you as well. Thank you
Wonderful
so much.
To have you.
It's like to be here.
So Jim and I were talking this morning about Breaking Twitter, your new book, about how long it would be before this was going to be made into a movie or a television series. And then we thought, too late, breaking news. It's going to be a TV series.
Yeah, we're doing a limited series. It's going to be 8 to 10 part television series. MGM bought it, and we're looking for our Elon right now. We're starting to meet with actors now that the strike's over. So
who could be Elon?
You know who could play him? I read the book. Donald Trump could play Elon Musk. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's it's got to be someone big and imposing. It's Jim, you would be perfect for this role.
Big and imposing. Thank you very much.
We're talking. We're hoping like a Ben Affleck would be a goal for us if we could pull that off.
Great.
But we're just starting the search now. But it's such a polarizing figure and a polarizing role, and it's all changed in the last year of who we see Elon as.
I mean, that's the whole thesis of your book. What were you doing with this book?
Yeah, so the thesis of the book is Elon didn't just break Twitter, Twitter broke Elon Musk. And the Elon of a year ago was someone that was broadly beloved. He was seen as sort of an Edison or this entrepreneurial genius who had created SpaceX and Tesla, the guy that Walter Isaacson's going to write a great big biography about. And then today, we're comparing him to Donald Trump. We're seeing him as this guy who's spiraled downward as the site has spiraled downward. I really, really believe it's in a horrible place.
Yep.
And that Elon is in a horrible place, and it affected him emotionally. There's a lot in this book that people haven't heard about him really falling apart. At one point, he locks himself in a conference room, and the people at Twitter are so concerned they're going to call in a wellness check with the San Francisco Police Department. It's a really dramatic thrill ride. That's the whole point of the book, is that Walter Isaacson would not have written his book today about Elon. Because
Walter Isaacson has taken a lot of criticism in some quarters for being too nice to Elon Musk, too enthralled with Elon Musk.
Well, I don't have that problem.
You do not have that problem.
Mine is the book that Elon doesn't want you to read, so.
So speaking of a wellness check, which was the most incredible part of the book to me, one of the things that was a bit troubling, apparently, to Elon Musk, because he goes on stage with Dave Chappelle. This is in 2022 at a stand-up show in San Francisco. This is shortly after he took over Twitter. The crowd's reaction was a little less than welcoming. Here's a little sound from it.
Make some noise for the richest man in the world. Sounds like some of the people you fired are in the audience.
I don't know if you could hear Chappelle. What Chappelle said is, it sounds like some of the people you fired are in the audience. I read your book in 2 nights in bed, and I was half asleep, so apologies for this. I can't remember. Was the thing that put him in a tizzy, which caused the wellness check almost to happen, was it the Chappelle thing, or when he did the poll about whether or not I should stay as head of Twitter, and overwhelmingly the answer was no?
Yeah, it's a spiral of events that start with the Chappelle show where he's booed on stage, and then he goes on Twitter the next day. He waits about 12 hours, then he's like, I think it was only 10% booing, whatever. And then that was the first time he'd actually gotten in person, this disdain, this hate for him. Then after that, a series of things happened. One of them was his car was attacked with his kid in it, which sends him in a spiral. At night, he starts firing off emails to everyone saying, you've got to throw people off Twitter. So he throws all the journalists off Twitter. And then we reach a point where he puts a poll out saying, do you want me to stay CEO? And he fully expects people to say yes, because he still thinks people love him. And more than half say, no, you should leave. That sends him into the real tailspin.
What did you, other than this wellness check potential thing, were they really concerned? What's the most powerful thing you learned researching and writing this thing you didn't know before, Ben Mezrich?
Yeah, I didn't know a couple things. First of all, his enmity towards Mark Zuckerberg. There's a real personal battle between these two people.
Whom you wrote about too.
Yeah, I wrote about him in the previous book, The Social Network. So there's really, when he first takes over Twitter and he signs the agreement, the first thing he screams out is F Zuck, right? That hasn't been reported yet. I think that other things I learned, like when you go to work for Elon, you're given a series of a list of how to talk to Elon. So there's like an instruction manual on how to deal with Elon one-on-one, because he's not normal in that respect. There's lots of things like that, how it affects him emotionally and personally, and also his view of the world. He really believes we're living in a simulation, and that he is the main player, and that all of us are non-playing characters.
I was going to ask you, I'm sorry, Marjorie, I was going to ask you, and you can do in a minute, since Marjorie mentioned Zuckerberg, how do you compare these two massive figures? So you can do that in a minute.
Yeah.
I wasn't joking about Trump, well, I was half joking, playing Musk before. There's so many similarities, at least my percent, other than the fact that Musk is a lot smarter than at least in my, as the rage, the childlike behavior, the inability to process bad news, the fact that almost nobody who works for him or around him will ever deliver bad news. Did you see
it's so wild that we're even having this conversation. This is the whole point of the book, is that a year ago you would never have compared Elon Musk to Donald Trump. Elon is thin-skinned. He's definitely someone that he fires people in the room. So everyone's terrified of him because he'll literally berate an employee and then fire them and throw them out in the middle of a meeting. And that happens all the time. He's a lot smarter. And originally he did not support Trump. He doesn't support Trump politically, but he's spun rightward so much by all of that's going on. He likes to strike out and burn things down when people attack him, that he's moving in that direction more and more and surrounding himself with more and more disagreeable people. It's all an outrage engine. It's all become this dramatic engagement outrage engine because he chased all the advertisers away. There's no other way for them to make money.
Well, I wonder if he's swung right wing a lot because he spent too much time on Twitter. I mean, what did you say he tweeted like some astronomical number of times?
Yeah, he's tweeted, I forget what the number is, 20,000. I can't remember the number.
20,000. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, he lives on Twitter. He spends a lot of time on Twitter. He's always on Twitter. He was a super user of Twitter before he took over Twitter. In a lot of ways, it's like a billionaire buying a yacht. You know, it's his plaything, it's his toy. But the reality is that when someone attacks him, he goes nuclear on them. And he felt like the mainstream media was attacking him, so he went nuclear on journalists. He kicked a lot of them off Twitter, and he feels like the Democratic Party has been not a fan of his, so he's swinging and pushing it in another direction to strike back at the people he feels like are his enemies.
Well, you had one of Elon Musk's tweets, I think it's page 122 or 120 or something like that in your book. I can read it if you've forgotten exactly.
I don't remember the page of that.
Okay, well, here it is. To anyone whom I've offended with my Twitter post, you should say whom actually, but that's okay. I just want to say I reinvented electric cars and I'm sending people to Mars in a rocket ship. Did you think I was also going to be a chill, normal dude? And, you know, at least he's self-reflective enough to see that he's not.
No, he knows.
Normal.
He knows who he is, and he knows that he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And you know, before Twitter, we were okay with that. He's mercurial is the word that's always used. He's an eccentric, brilliant billionaire. You're not expecting him to be a normal guy. But the problem is he's taken over a social media site that everybody kind of uses. It was at the center of our public conversation. So it's not just like buying a car company or a rocket ship, and you can't just engineer the problem away. And I think he thought free speech was simple, that it was something, you know, you pull a couple levers and we're going to less moderate and suddenly free speech is, you know, freed, right? But the reality is free speech is way more complex than a rocket ship, and it involves people, and that's something he's not good with.
I mean, because after all, Jim has a Tesla. It's very nice. We call it the Tesla la la.
We do.
I mean, there was I would say a large swath of genius in that production, and of course the space stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get us to Mars, and I think he went in with good intentions. He believed he was going to save the world from the woke mind virus, whatever that really is, and the idea was that free speech is the most important thing, which I think we all agree that free speech is super important. But the problem is he went in, scorched earth, fired everybody, and then immediately tweeted a conspiracy theory about Paul Pelosi getting beaten with a hammer, and he scared all the advertisers away, and then it became this battle with him and journalism and him and media, and he started doing weirder and weirder things. And then the blue check system, which he destroyed right away and chased all of sort of the intellectuals off of Twitter. Egalitarianism is great, but when you want to talk to someone about, say, flying airplanes, you want the person to actually be someone who flies airplanes. And the problem is with Twitter is you don't know who anybody is, and if you pay $8, you start to get boosted.
Yeah.
So it's pay for play. He destroyed the playing field, and he wanted Twitter to become the most true site on the internet. And anybody who looks at Twitter today knows it's the least true site on the internet, so I don't think he reached his goals.
Are you pro or anti-cage match?
Between him and Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
I will say if they fought, it would be my next book. I mean, that's exactly what I'm looking for in my next project. I know them both so well from doing projects on both of them that It would be fascinating to see them fight. I don't really want to see people get hurt. And obviously, Elon is a huge man who believes he can just lie on top of Zuckerberg.
I'll be flying him, so obviously it's a huge... So could you describe briefly, I really found this Esther character incredibly interesting in the book, and her elevation and then her fall. Could you describe a little bit?
Esther Crawford is a lesser-known character, although with my book, hopefully, a more-known character. She was kind of a lower-level project manager at Twitter, and she took her shot. You know, Elon walks in the front door carrying the sink. He's hanging around the cafe, and she sees him and walks up to him and basically says, I know payments, I want to do something. And he puts her on the head of the blue check. He actually elevates her to pretty much working side by side with him. Suddenly she has his ear. She's the person at every meeting who's talking face to face. She's the one, that viral picture of her sleeping under her desk, you know, which got her a lot of, you know, crap too, because people felt like she was working with the enemy in some ways. But she wanted to give Elon a chance. She really believed this could revitalize the company. There was a lot wrong with Twitter, before, and Elon was supposed to fix that. And I don't want to give it away, but you know, it doesn't work out for Esther. It doesn't work out for anybody working for Elon in the end, except for Elon. And one could argue it doesn't really work out for Elon either. But she ends up sort of face to face with his problems, and she actually writes him an email that says Twitter has 6 weeks left.
Yeah,
you know, it's going to spiral down to nothing, and he doesn't take that well.
You know,
well, that's one of the things about Esther. I mean, she
Yeah.
talks about how you're supposed to behave around him, which is flattery and build up his ego.
Flattery, make memes, send him memes in the middle of the night, never in
What's
front
it
of other
sound
people.
like, by the way? Donald Trump. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, by the way, we had Marty Barron here the other day, former editor of the Washington Post, and in his book he talks, and we talked to him too, about how he was urged by a former editor, I can't remember who it was, to do an analysis of what the former editor believed was the mental illness of Donald Trump, which I believe, but Marty Barron, probably the greatest editor of our generation, thought it wasn't appropriate. You're not in that spot. Psychoanalyze a guy who's the richest, maybe most powerful person in the world, who is as wildly insecure as Elon Musk is.
You know, I think that he sees himself on the spectrum. I mean, he really doesn't. He admits to not being good. Yes, he said it.
Saturday Night Live.
Right, said it on Saturday Night Live, and that was back when we loved him.
He was good on Saturday Night Live.
And he believes that he's not great with social things, but he also believes he's the main character in the video game of his life and of all of our lives, and that we're all meaningless. We're nothing. We're
little pixelated.
Which is why when someone walks up to him and tells him something, he pretty much ignores you, because if you were playing Fortnite and a little character walked up to you, you don't listen to it, right? You shoot it. And so I think that in general, he is very thin-skinned. He believes that he's right, and eventually the right answer will come. But he's also willing to blow things up to get there. The difference between him and Zuckerberg is Zuckerberg believes we'll all come around him at some point. Elon's willing to blow it all up and then have it work out.
So do you remember, I think it was 2 books back, Ben Mezrich, his latest book is Breaking Twitter. We did a little quiz with you in the studio. Do you remember the quiz?
I do, of my subtitles.
Okay, here's the deal. All of Ben's fabulous work has a subtitle, and we assumed that he, of course, since he wrote the books, would know the subtitle. So we're going to do it again. It's been a few years.
I should have studied. I should have known you were going to do
this. You should have studied. We're going to pick a couple of your wonderful books, and you're going to share with the listeners the subtitle.
I'm going to get them all wrong.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, let's go. I mean, the one that I assume everybody first thinks of is The Accidental Billionaires. This one you'll get. What is it?
The story of,
no.
Oh, gosh. No, sex. Wait, there's sex in it. There's definitely sex in it.
Really sad.
Sex, betrayal. Wait, Accidental Billionaires.
Oh, my God.
Sex, betrayal, and the founding of Facebook. I'm missing one.
That's pretty good.
It's the founding of Facebook, a tale of sex, money, genius,
that was a good subtitle.
How could you not read that?
They only made $42 trillion in that book, and he has no idea what the title was. You ready for another one?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, Bringing Down the House. This one's
that one I know. The true story of 6 MIT kids who took Vegas for millions.
That's close. The inside story.
The inside story.
Yeah. You do one. See if he does well.
Okay. Let me see.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I'll do one.
Yeah.
Sex on the Moon.
Sex on the Moon.
He has no idea.
That was a good book. Sex on the Moon was about, I know what it was about, but I don't remember the subtitle.
This is really sad.
He doesn't have to know the subtitle.
Yes, he does.
That's right.
Excuse me, it's our show. He has to know whatever he wants.
I
got one more. Wait, one more.
Okay, one more.
You brought on, I am almost never intimidated by a guest. You came, it wasn't you. Don't get excited. You brought on maybe the smartest man on earth to television with me years ago. When you wrote Wooly. What's his
George Church.
George Church.
George Church is literally Einstein of our time.
He probably is. Okay, what's the subtitle of that book?
Okay, it was about bringing back the woolly mammoth.
No, we know that. That's not the subtitle.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I don't think there was sex and betrayal in
The
Zuckerberg.
true story of the quest to revive one of history's most iconic extinct creatures. Were you intimidated by him?
I mean,
he's an incredibly
and
nice
when I
guy.
first sat down with George, he's intense. He's a narcolept. He's 6'5". He's brilliant, and he will fall asleep in the middle of a conversation, so it is interesting. And I remember our very first meeting, we're talking, and he literally just up and left. And because the meeting was done, and he was done talking. And I was like, well, I guess I leave now. But he's a wonderful man. I worked with him for a year. And by the end, I just think he's the most.
Bring him back to
smartest
Woolly
kid.
Mammoth.
Yeah.
He's the CRISPR guy and whatever.
If you have narcolepsy, what is it that triggers you to fall asleep?
Excitement. When you're excited
okay.
or find something funny.
By the way, he could play Elon Musk. He's huge.
He's big.
They had this great little video that I saw years ago of little narcoleptic puppies, and they see their little bowl of food,
That's
and
right.
they're trying to run to the bowl of
And then
food,
they
and they collapse,
fall
and then they
over.
stand up and collapse.
Yeah.
I want to know about Elon Musk and the 11 kids. What's up with that?
Yeah, so he really believes that we need to populate the Earth. He believes that the Earth is running out of people, the opposite of what some people think is that the world's overpopulated, and he's making a personal effort to repopulate the Earth.
I guess he is.
Yeah.
He thinks he has very good sperm, I
Well,
presume.
I mean, he's an interesting character, but he's doing his part for all of us.
Can you spend the last minute doing a Nostradamus thing? What happens to him and Twitter down the line?
Well, what I hope happens is that he walks away from it and allows Twitter to go back to Jack Dorsey, who I actually genuinely
The
like.
founder, yeah.
But the reality is, I think he can't lose. It's a scoreboard thing. He's going to run it down and down and down until it's like the chat room, like some dirty circus chat room of a bank and a dating website. That's really what he's moving towards. Is he's turning it pay for play. It's going to be subscription based. It really looks like it's not going to be the global town hall that we all wanted.
And it's worth, what, half of what it was when he bought it?
Yeah, I mean, he bought it for $44 billion, and they themselves are now valuing it at $18 billion, and that's being generous.
What can replace it? Nothing has.
Well, nothing has. It's still the most usable. Everyone's always like, well, why are you complaining about Twitter on Twitter? It's like you're on an airplane the only airplane going to a city, and it's a really crappy airplane. You still talk about how bad the airplane is, but you don't really have another choice. And right now, there is no other option that works like Twitter does, but it's getting worse and worse. I mean, if you go on there, it's just all hate and anti-Semitism and violence, and it's an outrage engine. It's become an outrage engine. That's what supports it. So I don't know how they fix it without him going away and without advertisers coming back, and that's going to take a new leadership.
By the way, the book is great. Say hi to Tony.
It is. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You really are one prolific guy, I'll say that for you.
I never leave my room.
How many are you working on now? Quickly. How many
books am I working on at the same time? I'm working on about 3 projects right now.
Oh, my God.
So it'll be some.
All right.
Okay.
Ben Mezrich, congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Another really fun read. The latest book is Breaking
Thank
Twitter,
you.
Elon Musk and the most controversial corporate takeover in history. I mean, when you want to hear a weird guy read this book, I mean, the guy's a weird guy. There's no question about it. Anyway, keep up with us 24/7. We have our podcast, which of course is called Boston Public Radio, and thank you for listening. Thank you for people that came down to the Boston Public Library. Tune in tomorrow for the Atlantic's Tom Nichols, food policy analyst Corby Kummer, naturalist and author Simon Montgomery, Grand Rabbi Y.A. Karoff of Congregation B'nai Jacob, live from Israel. He was there on the 7th of October as well. We're going to talk to him. And we're also going to speak with the people behind Cambridge's new initiative to have street signs in Native American language. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, with additional support from Ethan Kotler, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, and our executive producer is Jane Bologna. We also want to thank the team here down at the library today, Maddie Geyer and Angelica Marrero. I think I'm missing some people on my thanks to the library, so I apologize.
We thank you all, whoever you are.
Yeah, we thank you all. And again, the book is Breaking Twitter, Ben Mezrich, a really fun, well, I don't know if I should say fun. Well, it was fun.
I think it was fun.
Yeah, it was a fun read about a very odd guy. I'm Marjorie Egan.
What's the subtitle of Breaking Twitter?
There is no subtitle, is there?
He has
Oh, yes,
no
there
idea,
is.
does he? Quickly.
Subtitle?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
It's,
and
the most controversial takeover in corporate history.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Elon Musk.
Close enough.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Ben Mezrich. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.